When I stood up in that crowded hall and asked who would read my husband's letter, Whitney didn't even look embarrassed. She stood behind the lectern at the Great Plains Tool Library. Stanley's photograph was on the wall behind her. She had one hand resting on the printed program. "We threw it away," she said. "Just like that. Not misplaced, not forgotten at home. Thrown away." I turned toward my son. Eric was sitting in the front row. His shoulders went stiff, but he said nothing. The room became so quiet I heard the ventilation fan above the tool cages. Someone near the back set down a paper cup. I looked at Whitney again. "You threw away Stanley's letter?" She moved her hand off the program. It didn't fit what we planned. That was her answer. My husband had helped build that place. His name was printed on the invitations. His tools were displayed along the side wall. People had driven across Nebraska to remember him, but his own words didn't fit. I wish I could tell you I was surprised. I wasn't. Not by then. That moment started weeks earlier at my kitchen table, with a blue folder and a cup of coffee I forgot to drink. Stanley had been gone 11 days. He was 73 when he died. I was 71, and I still hadn't learned how to sleep on my side of the bed without listening for him. Every morning, I made coffee for 2. Every morning, I poured 1 cup back into the pot. There were sympathy cards across the dining room table. The good ones mentioned something specific: a repaired mower, a borrowed drill, a Saturday Stanley spent teaching someone to sharpen blades. The Great Plains Tool Library sent a large arrangement. It had yellow flowers and a card signed by the board. Stanley had helped establish the library because he hated seeing useful people stopped by one missing tool. Someone would need a pipe wrench once. Someone else needed a tile saw for a weekend. Stanley believed a town could share what people couldn't each afford. He never called it charity. He called it keeping work moving. Eric came by that morning with Whitney. He carried a bakery box. Whitney carried the blue folder. "Mom," Eric said, kissing my cheek, "we brought breakfast." It was almost noon. I moved some cards and made space at the table. Whitney put the folder down before she took off her coat. "We've made good progress," she said. "On what?" "The memorial." I looked at Eric. He opened the bakery box. 4 glazed donuts sat inside. "I thought we were discussing that together," I said. "We are," he told me. "This is just a starting point." Whitney opened the folder. The first page showed Stanley's photograph. It was a picture from the library's 5th anniversary. He wore his old brown work shirt. Someone had cropped me out of the right side. I knew because my hand was still visible on his shoulder. "We're holding it at the library," Whitney said. "That feels most appropriate." I touched the edge of the photograph. "When?" "The last Saturday in September." She said it as if we'd already agreed. Eric stopped arranging napkins. "That's soon," I said. "People need time to plan," he replied. "That isn't much time." Whitney gave me a careful smile. "The board wants momentum." I didn't understand that word in connection with grief. "What does momentum mean?" She turned to the second page. There was a schedule, welcome remarks, a sponsor presentation, a video about the library's growth, a section called Future Vision. Stanley's name appeared twice. Mine didn't appear at all. "Where's the family portion?" I asked. Eric glanced at Whitney. She tapped a line near the bottom. Personal reflections. It had 12 minutes. "Who's speaking? We haven't finalized that. I'm his wife." "Of course," she said it quickly. Then she turned the page. I put my hand over the folder. "Whitney, am I speaking?" She sat back. "We need to keep the program moving." I waited. Eric picked up a donut and put it down again. Whitney said, "You can absolutely share something in the personal reflections section. How much time?" 3 minutes would be ideal. I looked at Eric. "Your father and I were married for 48 years. He rubbed the side of his thumb against the table. "I know, Mom. And I get 3 minutes." "It's a public event," Whitney said. "It can't only be family memories. Only family memories." As if Stanley's life with me were an interruption. I closed the folder. Then why am I seeing this after it's scheduled? Whitney's smile disappeared. "We've had several planning meetings. I wasn't invited. We didn't want to burden you. That sentence gets used often around widows. People make a decision without you. Then they call the exclusion kindness. I pushed my coffee away. Who attended these meetings? Board members, sponsors, a few volunteers. Eric? He looked at me. Yes. My son had attended meetings about his father's memorial. He hadn't mentioned one of them. Why didn't you tell me? We were trying to take something off your plate. You could have asked what was on my plate. Mom. No, Eric, I'm asking. Whitney closed the folder more firmly. We're here now. I looked at her hand. Her nails were polished a pale pink. Stanley always noticed small things like that. He would have offered her a clean rag before showing her anything in the workshop. Eric leaned forward. Can we please not make this difficult? I stared at him. Make what difficult? The memorial. It's already difficult. Your father died. He lowered his eyes. Whitney stood and walked to the counter. She began opening cabinet doors. Where do you keep plates? Left of the sink. She found them and carried 3 back. That was Whitney's way. If a conversation stopped serving her, she found a task and behaved as if the task were the real reason everyone had gathered. She placed the plates beside the donuts. The sponsors are covering most event costs, she said. The library will handle the rest. What costs? Printing, equipment, catering, staff time. How much? We don't have the final figure. Then who approved it? The board has a budget. Eric spoke before she could continue. Dad would have wanted it done properly. I looked at the cropped photograph. Your father would have wanted me at the meeting. Neither of them answered. Whitney sat down again. There's another matter we need to keep on schedule. She took a single sheet from the folder. At the top was the name of the Hamilton Family Charitable Trust. I recognized the form. Stanley and I had established the trust in 2012. Each year, it could provide an operating grant to a Nebraska nonprofit doing workforce work. For years, that recipient had been the Tool Library. The annual grant was $72,000. Stanley treated the review seriously. He read the library's reports at the dining room table. He circled expense lines with a mechanical pencil. If something didn't make sense, he called. He never signed because someone expected him to. Whitney slid the paper toward me. The renewal deadline is September 30th. I didn't touch it. Where did you get this? The library received its planning notice. This isn't the library's form. No, but Amy said the grant is part of the upcoming budget. Amy Banks was the board chair. I had known her for years. She was practical, usually direct and not easily pushed. Has Amy asked me to sign this? Whitney glanced at Eric. The library needs predictability. That wasn't my question. Eric leaned closer. Mom, it's the same grant Dad approved every year. Your father reviewed it every year, and he renewed it after he reviewed it. Whitney folded her hands. Nothing has changed about the library's mission. I opened the folder again. I looked at the memorial schedule. Future Vision had 20 minutes. Personal Reflections had 12. What's this future section? It's an update. About what? The library's next stage. Who presents it? She paused. I do. Eric reached for the coffee pot. His cup was still full. I turned another page. There were sponsor logos. There was a description of Stanley's work that sounded like someone had copied it from an annual report. He wasn't described as a mechanic. He wasn't described as the man who spent cold mornings sorting donated socket sets. It said he was an early philanthropic partner. Stanley would have laughed at that. What's your role in this? I asked Whitney. I've been helping the board. Helping how? Community planning, sponsor relationships, program development. Paid? Eric set down the coffee pot. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Whitney's eyes stayed on me. The board is considering a community director position. For you, it's not final, but you're presenting the future of the library at Stanley's memorial. It's a natural opportunity. That was when I started paying attention. Not because I thought Whitney had planned Stanley's death. She hadn't. Not because I believed the library belonged to our family. It didn't. I started paying attention because grief had been turned into a launch date. The memorial wasn't only a memorial, it was also a stage. I tapped the renewal form. Does this grant pay for that position? Whitney looked toward Eric. He answered. The money supports operations. That didn't answer me. Mom, the library has to decide how to use its budget. Then the library can explain its budget. Whitney drew a slow breath. Ruth, this funding has been reliable for years. Reliable doesn't mean automatic. It's part of their annual planning. It's discretionary. Her face changed slightly. Only for a second. Eric didn't seem to notice. Whitney knew the word. She just hadn't expected me to use it. She slid the form closer. We only need your signature. No. Eric blinked. Mom, I haven't seen the library's plan. It's a renewal. It's a decision. Whitney stared at me. Are you threatening the library because you dislike the memorial program? No. I'm refusing to sign a form I haven't reviewed. You're upset. My husband died 11 days ago. Of course I'm upset. That's exactly why we're trying to handle this. I stood and carried my cold coffee to the sink. Behind me, Eric spoke quietly. Dad trusted us. I turned around. Then why didn't either of you trust me with a meeting invitation? He looked at the table. Whitney began placing papers back into the folder. We should go, she said. Eric didn't move. She touched his arm. Eric. He stood. At the door, he waited until Whitney stepped onto the porch. Then he lowered his voice. She's taking over a little. A little? I know how it looks. How does it look? He checked through the glass beside the door. Whitney was standing by their car. The announcement about her position is already circulating. What announcement? Nothing official, just among supporters. And the memorial? The invitations are being promoted. Without asking me. He pressed his lips together. Please cooperate. We can fix the program. Can you? Yes. Then send me the current version. I will. And tell me who approved Whitney's position. It hasn't been approved. Then why does she need my signature? His eyes moved toward the kitchen table. Because the board can't plan without the grant. There it was. Not the whole answer, but enough to hear the hinge. I kept my voice low. Did you think you controlled the trust? He looked offended. No. Did Whitney? He didn't answer. Eric. She assumed Dad's responsibilities would come to me. Did you correct her? I told her there were procedures. That isn't a correction. He rubbed his forehead. Mom, I can't do this right now. You came here with a funding form. He opened the door. I'll call tonight. He didn't. After they left, I put the donuts in the freezer. I washed 3 clean plates. Then I sat at the table and opened my small black notebook. Stanley used to tease me about that notebook. He said I wrote things down because I didn't trust other people's memories. He was right. I wrote the date. Eric and Whitney brought memorial plan. Meetings already held. I was not invited. 3 minutes offered. Sponsor material included. Whitney presenting future vision. Community director position discussed. Renewal form brought to house. No budget provided. Signature refused. I stopped there. Then I added one question. Does Whitney's position depend on the grant? I underlined it once. The second question took longer. Why was Eric afraid to answer in front of her? I closed the notebook and looked at Stanley's empty chair. His reading glasses were still beside the salt shaker. I hadn't moved them. I wasn't ready. The blue folder was gone, but Whitney had left 1 page behind. It had slipped beneath the bakery box. It was a draft expense sheet. The memorial catering was listed near the top. Printing came next, then consultant transition hours. I read that line twice. No name was attached. I took a picture of the page with my phone, then I placed it in my notebook. At 2:15, I called Amy Banks. She answered on the 4th ring. Ruth, I've been meaning to call, I'm sure. There was a pause. Is everything all right? No. I'd like to meet. About the memorial? About the memorial and the grant. Her voice became more careful. Whitney said Eric was handling the family side. I am the family side Amy didn't invite. Amy said nothing. I let the silence stay where it belonged. Finally, she said, "Can you come tomorrow morning?" "Yes, 9:30. I'll be there." Before we hung up, she added, "Ruth, please don't sign anything yet." I looked at the unsigned renewal form still visible in my mind. I haven't. Good. That one word told me more than she intended. I went to the hall closet and took down Stanley's old document case. The leather handle had a crack near one buckle. Inside were 14 years of grant notes, budget questions, and copies of his letters to the library. At the bottom was Nathan Davis's business card. Nathan handled the trust paperwork. I already knew control had passed to me when Stanley died. What I didn't know was how far that control reached without anyone else's approval. I called his office. His assistant offered me an appointment Thursday. "This concerns the September renewal," I said. She put me on hold. Nathan came on less than a minute later. "Mrs. Hamilton, I'm sorry about Stanley." "Thank you. What can I do?" "I need the trust instrument and the unsigned renewal authorization." "Of course. I also want the renewal held." He paused. "Held pending your review?" "Yes. Nothing should be processed from prior instructions. Nothing will be. Not from the library. Not from Eric. Only from me." His answer came plainly. "You're the trustee, Mrs. Hamilton. We'll take direction from you." I wrote that sentence down. Then I closed Stanley's document case, fastened both buckles, and set it on my chair for the morning. The next morning, I dressed before I made coffee. I chose gray slacks and the green cardigan Stanley liked. Then I changed the cardigan because I didn't want Amy noticing it and telling me Stanley had always liked that color. People meant well. That was almost worse. I put on a navy jacket instead. I carried the document case to my car and drove downtown. The Tool Library stood at 214 West 24th Street. It had once been an appliance warehouse. Stanley and a group of volunteers had spent months clearing it out. I still remembered him coming home covered in white dust. "It has good bones," he'd said. "It has no heat," I told him. "That can be fixed." Stanley believed most things could be fixed. He only needed enough time and the proper wrench. There were 3 cars outside when I arrived. One belonged to Amy. The other 2 had sponsor decals on their doors. Inside, a volunteer was setting up folding chairs. They were the same brown chairs used for repair classes. Someone had tied cream ribbons around the aisle seats. "Morning, Ruth," the volunteer said. "Good morning. We're sorry about Stanley. Thank you." He looked toward Amy's office. "They've done a nice job planning." I held the document case closer. "Have they?" His face changed. I'm sure they have." Amy came out before he could become more uncomfortable. She wore reading glasses on a cord. A yellow measuring tape hung from one pocket. "Ruth." She hugged me. I let her. Then she stepped back and touched my elbow. "Come in." Her office had barely enough room for 2 chairs. Boxes of safety goggles filled one corner. Stanley's old metal clipboard hung beside the door. I looked at it too long. Amy noticed. "We haven't moved anything from his workbench," she said. "I didn't ask you to." "I know." She shut the door. On her desk sat a copy of the blue folder. I placed Stanley's document case across my lap. Amy took off her glasses. "I should have called you before the first meeting." "Yes. I was told you didn't want to participate yet." "Who told you?" She looked down at the folder. "Whitney." "Did Eric agree?" "He didn't disagree." That was the first small truth I recovered. I hadn't been overlooked. No one had assumed I was too tired. Whitney had spoken for me. Eric had allowed it. How many meetings were there? 3. Who attended? Board members. Whitney. Eric came to 2. 2 sponsor representatives joined the last one. Was I discussed? Amy rubbed her thumb along the edge of her desk. "Whitney said you wanted something private later. She never asked." "I believe you." "Did you believe her?" "At the time, yes." "Why?" Amy put her glasses on again. She opened the folder and removed a page. Because Eric was sitting there. That hurt more than Whitney's lie. I studied the page Amy handed me. It was a list of assignments. Whitney's name appeared beside nearly every public part. Welcome. Sponsor recognition. Future vision closing remarks. Eric was listed beside guest seating. I wasn't listed anywhere. Did Eric see this? Yes. Did he object? Not in the meeting. I placed the page on Amy's desk. For most of Eric's life, I'd mistaken his silence for discomfort. I told myself he needed time. I'd explained him to Stanley, to teachers, to relatives, and later to Whitney. He cares, I would say. He just doesn't speak quickly. That was true when he was younger. At 46, silence was no longer shyness. It was a choice that let someone else do the damage. Amy turned the folder toward me. I brought the latest program. Why didn't Eric send it last night? I don't know. I read each page. Stanley's work had been reduced to a short paragraph. The sponsor tributes took 4 pages. There was a photograph of Whitney standing beside the library van. She wasn't wearing morning clothes. The picture had been taken months earlier. Under it, the caption read, "Building the Next Generation of Community Leadership." What does this have to do with Stanley? Amy's cheeks turned pink. That page was added yesterday, after they visited me. I believe so. Who approved it? It hasn't gone to the full board. Then why is it in the program? Whitney calls this a working draft. I moved to the expense page. The consultant transition hours were there again. What are these? Amy leaned back. Whitney has been doing planning work. Paid work? Not yet. Then why are hours listed as an expense? She expects compensation once the position is approved. How many hours? About 140. At what rate? Ruth. That's a number, Amy. $40 an hour. I calculated it in my head. $5,600. Who authorized that? No one has authorized payment. But she expects it. Yes? From the grant? The grant supports general operations. That sounds like Eric's answer. Amy took off her glasses. The truth is, the board has been discussing how to expand community programs. Whitney suggested the position. She offered to develop it. For herself. She believes she's qualified. That wasn't what I asked. Amy folded her glasses and set them down. Yes, for herself. I heard movement outside the office. Chairs scraped across the floor. A drill started in the workshop, then stopped. What happens if the grant isn't renewed? I asked. Amy took a long breath. We'd need to revise the budget. And the position? We couldn't create it this year. There it was. The memorial program wasn't simply flattering Whitney. It was helping establish her as the person for a job funded by money she expected me to release. Does Eric know? He was present when we discussed funding. Did he tell the board I would renew? He said the trust had supported us for years. That isn't an answer. Amy's mouth tightened. He said he didn't expect a problem. I looked at Stanley's clipboard on the wall. For 14 years, that grant had gone to the library. Stanley reviewed it, but I signed alongside him when required. I helped collect receipts. I hosted board dinners at our house. I bought extra coffee when they ran out. I washed serving bowls after everyone left. I thought that made me part of the work. The board saw Stanley. Whitney saw funding. Eric saw something that would continue because his parents had always made things continue. I had helped teach him that. Whenever he forgot a deadline, I reminded him. Whenever family plans became awkward, I softened the conversation. When Whitney made a sharp remark, I found the kinder meaning and repeated that instead. I called it keeping peace. Really, I'd been cleaning up silence before anyone had to smell it. Amy reached across the desk. I'm sorry. I moved my hand before she could touch it. Has the position been approved? No. Has it been announced? Not officially. Eric said it's circulating among supporters. Amy closed her eyes briefly. Whitney has been making calls. With whose permission? She's been helping with sponsor outreach. So people believe the job is hers. Some probably do. Do they believe I approved the funding? I can't say. You can ask. She nodded. I will. I opened Stanley's document case. I took out his grant notebook from the previous year. You sent the planning notice before Stanley died? Yes. It's generated each August. Who received it? The trust office received the formal notice. We sent copies to Stanley and Eric. Why Eric? He's on the board. Did you send one to me? Amy looked through a file. No, you knew I was a co-trustee then. I knew you and Stanley handled it together. That isn't the same thing. No, Stanley had always dealt with the library directly. I'd been content to stay home with the papers after meetings. I knew the figures. I knew when insurance increased. I knew which programs needed new equipment. But I let Stanley be the face because he enjoyed it. After his death, no one seemed to remember that the quiet person at the table had been reading the same pages. I stood. I want every memorial draft. You'll have them. Every expense sheet, too. Amy nodded. And no one should describe Whitney's position as approved. I'll speak to her. Speak to the board. That made Amy sit straighter. All right. I fastened the document case. At the door, she said, Ruth, I truly thought you wanted space. I wanted my husband alive. Space wasn't the problem. She looked down. I left before she could apologize again. In the main room, someone had placed Stanley's tool chest beneath his photograph. The top drawer was open. A pair of his pliers lay inside. I walked over and picked them up. His initials were scratched into one handle. They belonged there. Stanley had donated them years ago. Still, I had the strange urge to put them in my purse. Instead, I closed the drawer. When I reached my car, Eric was waiting beside it. He had parked across the street. His jacket was unzipped, and he looked as if he'd driven over quickly. Amy called you, I said. She said you were here. That isn't why you came. He looked toward the building. She told me you asked about Whitney's position. I did. Mom, Whitney has worked hard on this. So have many unpaid volunteers. She has experience. Then she can apply for an approved job. She is applying. She's presenting herself at your father's memorial. His jaw tightened. You're making it sound worse than it is. I'm reading what they printed. It's a draft. So is the paper she brought me for $72,000. He lowered his voice. Can we not discuss the amount in the parking lot? There's no one near us. It's still private. My signature was private until Whitney carried the form into my kitchen. He ran a hand through his hair. I told her not to push you. No, you sat beside her. That isn't fair. It's exact. A delivery truck passed behind him. We waited for the noise to fade. Then he said, What do you want? I almost answered, Your father back. Instead, I said, I want the memorial to sound like him. It will. I want his work described by people who knew it. Fine. I want the sponsor presentation shortened. I can talk to Whitney. You've been talking to her for weeks. His face hardened. Nothing I do is enough today. You haven't done the one thing I asked. What? Send me the program. I was going to. I opened my car door. Send it now. He took out his phone. I watched him forward the file. My phone chimed inside my purse. There, he said. It was a tiny thing. A file I should have received from the beginning. Still, it was access. Thank you. His shoulders lowered. Can we please get through this together? I wanted to say yes. That was my weakness with Eric. Give me one useful action and I began building a bridge around it. I had spent years believing that if I stayed reasonable, he would eventually stand beside me. I didn't want to lose my place in his life by asking him to choose a side. Even after what Amy told me, part of me still wanted him to call me Mom in that tired voice and let the word mean I belonged. So I softened. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I know. I want to be included. You are included. 3 minutes isn't inclusion. I'll fix it. And there's something else. I looked through the glass doors at Stanley's photograph. Your father's letter. Eric stopped moving. Stanley had written it during his final illness. He sealed the signed original in a plain white envelope. I was in our living room when he gave it to Eric. Keep this in your desk, Stanley had said. When the family gathers after I'm gone, read it. Eric's eyes had filled. I don't want this. I know. Then keep it yourself. I'm trusting you. Eric took the envelope with both hands. Later, he told me he locked it in his home desk. That happened before Whitney began arranging anything. Now I looked at him across the car door. Who's reading the letter? He stared down at his phone. I haven't decided. Your father decided. He gave it to you. I know. Is it still in your desk? A pause came before his answer. Whitney took charge of it. What does that mean? She has the memorial materials. Have you opened it? No. Has she? I don't think so. You don't think so? Mom, it's sealed, so ask her for it. I will. When? Tonight. I watched his face. Put it in the program, Eric. I said I'll handle it. That isn't what I asked. He stepped back from my car. I'll make sure Dad's letter is handled. He said handled the same way Whitney did, as if Stanley's words were another chair delivery. I got into the car. Before I closed the door, Eric bent slightly toward me. Are you still meeting Nathan? How do you know about Nathan? Whitney called his office. My hand stayed on the door. Why? She wanted another copy of the renewal form. And what did they tell her? That they couldn't discuss the trust with her. I nodded once. Good. Eric's expression changed. Mom, you're not actually considering pulling the grant. I'm considering reading the documents. Dad wouldn't want the library punished. Then it's fortunate I'm not punishing anyone. He waited for more. I gave him nothing else. I drove home with the program on my phone and Stanley's records beside me. When I reached my kitchen, an email from Amy was waiting. It contained every planning draft. The earliest one had a family letter after the welcome. The next draft moved it near the end. The latest draft removed it completely. Whitney's name appeared in the revision notes beside each change. I printed all 3 versions and laid them in order across the table. Then I called Eric. He didn't answer. I left one message. I have the earlier drafts now. Your father's letter was in the program before Whitney removed it. Please bring the sealed original to me tomorrow. He called me 20 minutes later. Mom, I can't bring it tomorrow. Why not? Whitney has a sponsor breakfast. The letter isn't attending breakfast. She has the memorial files locked in her car, then asked for her keys. He sighed. Can we do this later? I asked one clear question. I'm giving you an answer. No, you're giving me her schedule. He went quiet. I could hear a television behind him. Then Whitney said something too low for me to understand. Is she there? I asked. Yes. Put me on speaker. I don't think that's a good idea. Why? Because everyone's upset. I looked at the 3 drafts on my table. I'm not upset. I'm asking for an envelope. Whitney's voice came closer. Tell her we'll review it after the breakfast. I heard every word. Whitney, I said, the envelope belongs to the family. Eric covered the phone. Their voices became muffled. Then he came back. I'll look for it tomorrow night. You said she had it. She does. Then there's nothing to look for. Mom, please, bring it before the memorial. I will. And don't open it without me. He didn't answer right away. Eric, I heard you. The line went dead. I checked the time. Nathan's office had closed. I left the drafts on the table overnight. I wanted to see them when I came downstairs. At 7 the next morning, the earliest program was still where I'd placed it. Family letter appeared beneath the welcome. In the second draft, it came after the sponsor video. In the third, it was gone. Those papers settled something for me. I was no longer asking for a larger part in Whitney's program. I needed to know what she was building around Stanley's name. I put the drafts into the document case. Then I drove to the trust office. Nathan worked in a brick building near the courthouse. The lobby had dark carpet and a coffee machine that made more noise than coffee. His assistant led me into a small conference room. The trust instrument sat on the table. So did the unsigned renewal authorization. Nathan came in carrying a yellow legal pad. He was 52, careful with his words, and always looked as though he had just finished checking a column of numbers. He shook my hand. Mrs. Hamilton, again, I'm very sorry. Thank you. He waited until we sat. You asked us to hold the library renewal. Yes, it has been marked for trustee review. Nothing can be processed without your written direction. Has anyone else contacted you? Nathan looked at his notes. Whitney Hamilton called yesterday. What did she ask? For a replacement authorization. Did she say why? She said Eric would handle the renewal. I kept my hands folded on the table. What did you tell her? That I couldn't discuss the trust with her. Did Eric call? No. Did the library? Amy Banks called last week about the deadline. Before Stanley's memorial was announced? Yes. What did she ask? Whether the trust office anticipated any interruption. And what did you say? That the annual grant is discretionary. I looked at the document in front of him. Explain discretionary to me plainly. Nathan nodded. The trust may make the grant. It isn't required to. Does the library have a right to renewal? No. Does past funding create one? No. Can Eric approve it? No. Can the board? No. Can anyone approve it besides me? No. He turned the trust instrument toward me. A paragraph had been marked with a paper tab. Stanley became unable to serve shortly before his death. Under the succession terms, you became sole trustee. I knew that part. Yes, you asked about the scope. I want the exact scope. You may renew the grant. You may decline it. You may also direct the same annual amount to another qualifying Nebraska workforce nonprofit. Without Eric's approval? Yes. Without the library board's approval? Yes. Without yours? I authenticate the direction and process it. I don't choose the recipient. That distinction mattered. Nathan wasn't offering to decide for me. He was confirming the decision was mine. What qualifies? The organization must be a Nebraska nonprofit. Its work must relate to employment skills, trades training, tools, or workforce access. Can the money be divided? The instrument allows one annual recipient, one grant, one decision. When is my last day to direct it? September 30th. And if I do nothing? No grant is issued for this cycle. I looked through the first pages. Stanley's signature was near the bottom. Mine was beside it. We had signed those papers in 2012. Afterward, Stanley took me to lunch. He ordered meatloaf. I ordered soup. We spent more time discussing the cost of the meal than the trust we had just established. That was how ordinary it had felt. Money set aside, rules written down, work supported. We never imagined our son's wife would bring the renewal into my kitchen 11 days after Stanley died. Nathan moved the authorization closer. The library submitted its standard request. When? 2 days ago. Who signed it? Amy Banks. Is Whitney's proposed position mentioned? He opened another folder. The request lists community development staffing. Does it name her? No. Does it include the memorial expenses? No. Consultant transition hours? No. That inconsistency was now confirmed. The board's formal request described staffing in general. Whitney's memorial materials already treated her work as an expense. May I have a copy? Yes. Nathan made one for me. When he returned, I placed the memorial expense sheet beside the grant request. He read only the 2 lines I pointed to. Are those the same expense? I asked. I can't determine that. Would the trust office reimburse these hours automatically? No. The grant, if renewed, would be paid to the library. The library would control its operating expenses. So my decision funds the budget. The board decides whether Whitney gets paid. That's correct. The mechanism was simple. I controlled the grant. The board controlled its spending. Whitney needed both. Has anyone told you Stanley intended Eric to take over? Nathan's expression stayed neutral. Whitney used the phrase, family continuity. What did you say? I said the trust instrument controls. I almost smiled, not because anything was funny. I was relieved to hear one person speaking in complete sentences. I want a written note in the file, I said. No records go to Eric or Whitney. They wouldn't without your authorization. I want it written anyway. Nathan picked up his pen. All right. No replacement form should be sent through them. Understood. Send every trust communication directly to me. He wrote that down too. That was my first deliberate move. It wasn't loud. No one lost a job that morning. No announcement went out. But the assumption that Eric could step into Stanley's place stopped at that conference table. Nathan gave me a copy of the instruction. Do you want us to notify the library that renewal is under review? Not yet. They may continue planning around prior funding. That's their choice. The deadline is close. I understand. He placed the unsigned authorization inside the trust folder. Would you like to take this? Yes. Once it was in my hands, I felt its weight differently. It wasn't merely a signature page. It was a promise everyone else had already spent. Before I left, Nathan gave me a list of organizations that had qualified in previous reviews. I didn't ask for recommendations. I wasn't ready to redirect anything. I folded the list and put it behind the trust instrument. Outside, the morning had warmed. I sat in my car and called Amy. She answered immediately. How did the meeting go? You knew about it? Eric told me. When? This morning. I looked through my windshield at the courthouse clock. What else did he tell you? That the trust is under review. I told him I was reading the documents. That's all. Amy waited. I said, your grant request includes community development staffing. Yes. Why doesn't it identify Whitney? The position hasn't been created. Then why is she recording transition hours? I told you those haven't been approved. Who asked her to do the work? Another pause. She volunteered. Did the board tell her she might be paid later? Not formally. Informally? I said we could consider reasonable startup work if funding allowed. So, you did tell her. I didn't promise payment. But she heard enough to begin counting hours. Amy exhaled. That's fair. Was Eric present? Yes. Did he tell you I would approve the grant? He said the family supported the direction. The family wasn't asked. Ruth, I should have called you. You should have. I watched a woman cross the street carrying 2 paper grocery bags. One bag split near the bottom. She caught it against her hip and kept walking. Amy said, what do you want me to do? Remove Whitney's photograph from the memorial program. All right. Restore Stanley's letter. I can put it back. Don't assign a reader yet. Why? Because Eric hasn't produced the original. Her voice sharpened. What do you mean? He says Whitney has it. Has she shown it to you? No. To the board? No. Then why was it ever removed? That's what I'm trying to learn. Amy was silent for several seconds. I didn't know Stanley wrote a family letter. It was listed in your first program. Whitney added that item from Eric's notes. She later said the family decided not to use it. The family didn't decide that. I see. She sounded tired now. For the first time, I wondered how much Whitney had been telling different people. Send me the revised program before it's printed, I said. I will. And ask your board what they believe my grant is funding. That conversation could be uncomfortable. It should be accurate. Amy agreed to call a board meeting for Monday evening. The memorial was the following Saturday. The renewal deadline came 4 days after that. The calendar was suddenly crowded. When I got home, Eric's truck was in my driveway. He was sitting on the front step with a ring of keys in his hand. I parked in the garage and carried the document case inside. He followed me into the kitchen. You went to Nathan without me, he said. I didn't need you. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? He sat where he had sat beside Whitney 2 days earlier. Dad always included me in trust discussions. No, he explained decisions after he made them. I was on the library board. You still are. Then the grant affects something I'm responsible for. That's why board members shouldn't promise money they don't control. I didn't promise anything. You said you didn't expect a problem. He turned the keys around his finger. Did Nathan give you all the records? Yes. I should have copies. No. His hand stopped. I'm Dad's son. So am I supposed to hand over trust records because of that? You know what I mean. I do. That's why I said no. His face changed from frustration to something closer to hurt. For years, I would have rushed to soften that look. I would have brought him coffee. I would have explained until my boundaries sounded like an apology. I didn't move. Did you bring the letter? I asked. No. Why not? Whitney took the memorial box to the library. Is the envelope in it? She says it is. You haven't checked. I trust my wife. That wasn't my question. He put the keys on the table. She thinks you're trying to block her job. I'm reviewing a grant. She says you never objected before. Her job didn't exist before. She's trying to help the library grow. Then she can explain her plan to the board without using your father's memorial to advertise herself. He stood. I came because I thought we could go through Dad's files together. The trust files? Yes. No. Mom, you arrived without his letter and asked for my records. They were his records too. They belong to the trust. His mouth opened, then closed. I took Nathan's written instruction from the case. I didn't hand it to Eric. I placed it on my side of the table. All communication comes to me now. He stared at the page. You cut me out. No. I stopped you from putting yourself in. He picked up his keys. At the doorway, he looked back. Whitney won't take this quietly. I slid the unsigned authorization into my notebook. That isn't a reason to sign it. He was right about that. Whitney called before he reached the end of my street. I let the phone ring while I put Nathan's instruction back into the document case. Then I answered. Ruth, what did you say to Eric? I answered his questions. He came home looking like you'd accused him of stealing. I told him he can't have the trust records. Why not? Because he isn't the trustee. He's Stanley's son. That doesn't give him access. Her breath caught. This has always been handled as a family matter. No, it's been handled according to the trust. You're splitting hairs. The document doesn't have hairs. She made a short sound. It might have been a laugh if anything were funny. Eric has responsibilities to the library. Then he should keep those separate from my responsibilities. Our responsibilities affect each other. Yours don't include my signature. Silence. I opened the refrigerator and took out a carton of eggs. My hands were steady, but I wasn't hungry. Whitney spoke more softly. I know you're grieving. Don't use that word to make me sound confused. I didn't say you were confused. You were getting there. She dropped the soft voice. The board has been planning around this grant for months. Then the board should have spoken to the trustee. Stanley never made us beg every year. Reviewing a request isn't begging. You know what I mean? Yes. You expected the money without asking me. That isn't fair. Who told the sponsors you were becoming community director? No answer. Whitney? It has been discussed. Who told them? I may have mentioned the proposal. As a possibility? The conversations weren't formal. You put your photograph in a memorial program. That was a design concept. For your job. For the library's future. I cracked 2 eggs into a bowl. Those are different things. Not if I'm the person doing the work. Then let the board decide after funding exists. The board needs to know funding exists before it decides, and I need to know how the grant will be used. She exhaled slowly. Are you coming to the meeting Monday? Amy invited me. I thought it was a board meeting. It is. You're not on the board. Neither are you. That ended the call. She hung up without saying goodbye. I scrambled the eggs and ate 3 bites. Then I washed the plate. On Sunday, I went through Stanley's grant notebooks. His notes weren't complicated. He wrote questions in the margins. How many people completed training? Who uses evening hours? Why did repair costs double? One page from the previous year had a line beneath the library's staffing expenses. Good program. Watch administration. I pressed my finger against those words. Stanley hadn't opposed salaries. Neither did I. Buildings needed people. Programs needed planning. But he wanted the work to stay visible. That afternoon, Amy emailed the revised memorial program. Whitney's photograph was gone. Future vision had been reduced to 8 minutes. Personal reflections had been increased to 20. My name appeared first. Stanley's letter was back near the beginning. Beside it, Amy had written, "Reader to be confirmed by family." I printed the program. That was a practical win, small but real. I placed it beside the earlier versions. Then I called Eric. He didn't answer. I sent one message. The letter is back in the program. Please confirm you have the original. He read it within a minute. He didn't reply. On Monday evening, I reached the library at 6:40. The meeting started at 7. The front doors were locked, so Amy let me in. They're in the classroom, she said. Who? The board. Eric. Whitney asked to present. Present what? Her proposal. I looked at Amy. Was that planned? No. She sent it this afternoon. Did you send it to me? Amy handed me a printed packet. I brought you a copy. The cover said, Community Director Implementation Plan. The first paragraph described the memorial as an opportunity to introduce a new season of leadership. Stanley's name appeared in the second paragraph. The trust appeared in the third. Not my name. The trust. I turned the page. Whitney's proposed salary was $52,000. Benefits and event expenses brought the first-year cost above $70,000. The annual grant was listed as the primary source. The numbers were so close they seemed to touch. This position uses almost all of it, I said. Yes. What happens to the programs the grant currently supports? The proposal assumes sponsor growth will replace some operating money. Assumes? Amy lowered her voice. I have concerns. Did you have them before I asked questions? Some. But you let her present herself to sponsors. I let her help with outreach. That's not the same sentence. No. I looked through the classroom window. Eric sat at the long table. Whitney was beside a portable screen. 3 other board members were reading her packet. Do they know the grant isn't automatic? They will tonight. From you or me? Amy looked at the document case in my hand. From you, if you're willing. That was the cost of asking to be included. Once I walked into that room, I couldn't return to being the quiet widow who signed after everyone else had planned. I'm willing. Amy opened the door. Eric stood when he saw me. Mom, what are you doing here? Amy invited me. Whitney clicked something on her laptop. The screen behind her went dark. This is a closed board session, Eric said. Amy took her chair at the end of the table. Ruth is here regarding the grant. One board member pulled out the chair beside him. I sat. Whitney remained standing. I'd prefer to present before we discuss funding, she said. Amy nodded. Go ahead. Whitney turned the screen back on. Her first slide showed the outside of the library. The second listed community partnerships. The third described her experience with events, sponsors, and volunteer coordination. She spoke well. That mattered. It would have been easier if she were foolish. She wasn't. She knew how to take separate tasks and describe them as one leadership role. She had helped with 2 donor events. She had arranged a partnership breakfast. She had created a volunteer survey. Each item was true. The conclusion was where truth became useful to her. The memorial gives us a natural point of transition, she said. We can honor Stanley's foundation while showing supporters that his work has continuity. One board member asked, has the family approved using the memorial that way? Whitney looked at Eric. He cleared his throat. We want Dad's work to continue. The board member looked at me. Mrs. Hamilton? I folded my hands over the packet. I approved a memorial. I did not approve a job announcement. Whitney's face stayed composed. The position wouldn't be formally announced. What would be said? That I'm leading community development. Are you? I'm doing the work. Has the board appointed you? No. Has the board approved your salary? Not yet. Has the trust renewed the grant? Her mouth tightened. That's why we're all here. No, I'm here because you planned as though it had. Eric leaned toward me. Mom, she's answering. I'm listening. Whitney changed the slide. A budget appeared. She explained that the position would increase sponsor revenue. She expected it to pay for itself after the first year. What pays for the first year? I asked. The operating grant provides stability. The Hamilton grant? Yes. All $72,000? Not all of it. Your packet lists salary, benefits, travel, and events at $71,400. The event line supports the library. It also supports your role. Every director has expenses. You're not the director. Amy raised one hand. Let's keep this orderly. Whitney closed her laptop. I think my proposal speaks for itself. It does, I said. Eric looked at me sharply. Amy opened the library's current budget. The board needs to address a basic issue. The proposed position can't be created unless the annual grant is renewed. No one argued. Amy continued. We have no other committed funding for it. Whitney sat down. One board member asked whether sponsors had pledged enough to cover any part of the salary. Amy said no. Another asked whether the consultant transition hours had been authorized. They have not, Amy replied. Whitney's chair moved against the floor. I was told reasonable startup work could be considered. Considered, Amy said, not promised. Eric looked from Amy to Whitney. He seemed to be hearing the distinction for the first time. I took the unsigned authorization from my document case. I placed it on the table. This is the renewal form, I said. It has not been signed. Whitney stared at it. I continued. The grant is under review. No one should represent it as approved. One board member nodded. That seems clear. Whitney's voice became very quiet. Are you withholding it because you don't want me hired? I'm withholding a decision until I know what I'm funding. You know now I know your proposal. What else is there? The library's work. The room stayed silent. I turned to Amy. I want current program costs, training hours, tool access, repair expenses, everything the grant supported last year. I can provide that. When? Wednesday. The memorial was Saturday. The renewal deadline followed soon after. Wednesday gave me little time. It gave Whitney even less. Eric finally spoke. Could the board vote on the position pending renewal? Amy looked around the table. We could, but that would continue the same assumption Ruth just corrected. Whitney turned toward him. You said this was routine. He lowered his voice. It has been. You said your father intended it to continue. He did. I looked at my son. Did Stanley ever tell you that? Eric's eyes moved to the packet. He supported the library. That isn't what I asked. He renewed the grant every year, after reviewing it. Whitney pushed back her chair. So this entire process changes because Ruth wants more paperwork? I answered before Amy could. It changes because Stanley died. Whitney looked at me as if I had used his death unfairly. That look told me how completely she had separated his money from his absence. Amy closed the budget. No vote tonight. We'll reconvene after Ruth receives the requested information. Whitney stood. The sponsors are expecting an announcement Saturday. Who promised one? Amy asked. Whitney gathered her papers. They expect progress. That's not an answer, I said. She shoved the laptop into its case. Eric remained seated. I put the unsigned authorization back into my document case. On the way out, Amy handed me the corrected memorial program. This version goes to the printer tomorrow, she said, unless you object. I read it once more. My name remained in the program. The sponsor section was shorter. The letter had been restored. I don't object. Then this is the version we'll print. Whitney heard her. She stopped near the front door. You're letting her rewrite the whole event. Amy's reply was calm. It's Stanley's memorial. Whitney looked at Eric. He said nothing. She walked outside alone. I should have felt satisfied. I had recovered a place in the program. I had stopped a false announcement. I had made the board acknowledge that the position depended on my decision. Instead, I watched Eric through the glass. He picked up Whitney's forgotten charging cord and wrapped it neatly around his hand. Then he came to me. You embarrassed her. She presented a salary without funding. You could have warned us. I asked for the budget in my kitchen. He looked toward the parking lot. She's worked on this for months, while telling people I wanted privacy. His face went still. That's not what happened. Amy said you were there. I thought you did want privacy. You never asked me. He gripped the charging cord. I need Dad's trust notebooks. No, if I can show you what he intended, maybe this doesn't become a fight. The notebooks are already with me. Not all of them. What does that mean? There are older records at the house. My house. Dad said he kept a separate file. Where? In his desk. Stanley's desk was in the small room off our kitchen. I had not opened its bottom drawers since he died. Did you go through that desk? No. Did Whitney? Eric looked toward the parking lot again. She was helping me find the trust papers after the funeral. I felt the corrected program bend beneath my fingers. Was I home? You were asleep. What did she take? I don't know. Did she take anything? She found a folder. I thought it was copies. What color? Red, I think. Stanley kept his trust correspondence in a red accordion folder. I put the program inside my document case. Give me my house key. Eric stared at me. Mom. Now. He removed the key from his ring and placed it in my palm. I closed my fingers around it. This doesn't mean I don't trust you, Eric said. It means you entered my house while I slept. I have entered that house my whole life. That doesn't answer what happened Monday. Whitney was helping. She removed trust records. She thought they were copies. You keep saying what she thought. He looked down at the key in my hand. I'll ask her to return the folder, tonight. It's late. It wasn't too late to present a salary. He flinched. I left him standing near the classroom door. At home, I went straight to Stanley's desk. The room smelled faintly of his hand lotion and old paper. His chair was pushed in. A stack of hardware catalogs sat beneath the lamp. His pencils were lined up in a coffee mug from the library. Nothing looked disturbed until I opened the bottom drawer. The hanging files leaned toward an empty space. Stanley had labeled each tab in black ink: insurance, house, trust tax, library reports. The red accordion folder had occupied the space after library reports. A clean strip showed where it had been. I pulled out every remaining file. I placed them on the floor in order. No red folder, no loose copies. Inside the library file, I found grant reports from earlier years. The most recent one was missing. I also found Stanley's handwritten list for the current review: program enrollment, tool repair, evening access, staffing proposal. He had put a question mark after the last line. I sat in his chair. The staffing proposal hadn't begun after his death. Stanley knew something was being discussed. That didn't mean he approved it. It meant he intended to ask. I took a picture of the page. Then I returned every file to its place. Before bed, I called a locksmith. He came at 8 the next morning. He changed the back door and the kitchen entrance. He rekeyed the front lock to match. I stood beside him while he tested each key. That one sticks a little, I said. He adjusted it. Then he handed me 3 new keys in a small envelope. I put one on my ring. The other 2 went into the document case. That work took 40 minutes. It didn't answer where my papers were. It did stop anyone from entering again. At 9:12, Eric called. Did you change the locks? Yes. Whitney's key doesn't work. She came to my house? She went to return the folder. Tell her I'm home. She says you embarrassed her in the driveway. There was no one in my driveway. That's not the point. Then what is? You changed the locks without telling us. I changed my locks. Dad gave me that key. Your father isn't here to see how it was used. He went silent. I regretted the sentence as soon as I said it. I didn't take it back. I'll bring the folder later, he said. Bring the letter too. I have to work. So do I. I hung up and drove to the library. Amy had promised the operating records by Wednesday. She had them waiting in 2 binders. We sat at a work table instead of her office. The library was open and people moved through the main room. A man returned a floor sander. A woman signed out a set of plumbing tools. 2 volunteers checked drill batteries. Stanley used to say the building sounded best when no one had time to talk. Amy opened the first binder. This is the last full year. She showed me the grant ledger. The $72,000 supported tool repairs, evening staff hours, safety classes, and fee waivers. It also helped pay for 2 part-time instructors. How much is left after current programs? I asked. Very little. How little? About $3,000 in a normal year. Then how does Whitney's salary fit? Amy opened the second binder. Her proposal moves several current costs to sponsor support. Support that isn't committed, correct. And if sponsors don't cover it, we reduce programs or use reserves. How much is in reserves? Enough for several months of basic operations, not enough for a new permanent position. So the grant doesn't create extra money. No, it replaces existing work with her position. Amy considered that. Some work would be absorbed into her position. Can she repair tools? No. Teach safety classes? No. Supervise evening access? Possibly, with training. I looked across the room. A volunteer was showing someone how to inspect a circular saw before borrowing it. He pointed to the guard. The borrower repeated the motion. That was the work. Not a sponsor breakfast, not a slide presentation. "Show me what the grant paid for this month," I said. Amy seemed surprised. "Physically?" "Yes." She stood. We started in the repair area. 2 drills waited for new switches. A pressure washer had a cracked hose. Safety labels had been ordered for the table saw. Amy showed me the locked cabinet containing protective equipment. "Grant money replaces these," she said. Then we went to the classroom. An evening electrical course used that room twice a week. The instructor's hours were partly covered by the grant. How many people attend? Usually 14 or 15. Adults changing work. Mostly, some need basic skills for maintenance jobs. We walked to the checkout desk. Fee waivers were recorded in a separate column. People who couldn't afford annual membership could still borrow tools after orientation. Stanley had insisted on that. He said charging someone for access to a donated wrench could become its own kind of foolishness. I ran my finger down the waiver list. The numbers weren't enormous. They were real. If I declined the grant, the library wouldn't collapse the next morning. But something would have to change. That was the wider problem. Whitney had placed herself between me and work Stanley cared about. If I signed, her position could move forward. If I didn't, Amy would have to protect the existing programs another way. I couldn't pretend my decision touched only Whitney. Amy closed the ledger. I should have stopped the proposal sooner. Why didn't you? She brought energy. Sponsors responded to her. And Eric? He supported her because he believed the trust would pay. Yes? I looked toward Stanley's workbench. Did Stanley ever discuss the position? Not directly with me. He wrote staffing proposal in his notes. Amy frowned. He may have heard about a general staffing review. From whom? Eric mentioned expanding outreach at the August meeting. Was Whitney there? No. She wasn't part of board meetings then, so Eric introduced the idea. I believe so. That was another useful answer. Whitney had shaped the proposal, but Eric had opened the door. I had been treating him like the person standing behind her. He had helped place her in front. May I have copies of these pages? Amy copied the current program budget, the uncommitted sponsor estimates, and the fee waiver record. While the machine ran, the front door opened. Whitney walked in carrying the red folder. She saw me at the work table. Then she saw the open binders. Her pace slowed. "I tried your house," she said. "I was told. You changed the locks." "Yes." She held up the folder. "I was returning this." I took it from her. The elastic band had been wrapped around it twice. Stanley always wrapped it once. "Why did you remove it?" "Eric asked me to find the renewal records. Eric says you were helping him. That's the same thing." "No. One gives you permission. The other gives you a task." She looked at Amy. "Are we doing this in public?" Amy collected the copies from the machine. "I'll give you both some space." She handed them to me and walked toward her office. Whitney lowered her voice. "I was trying to keep the grant on schedule. By taking records from my desk? We needed prior budgets. You could have asked. You were barely sleeping. You knew that because you entered while I slept." Her cheeks colored. "Eric let me in. The key belonged to him. The house didn't." She pulled out a chair. "Can we sit down?" "I'd rather stand." She remained standing too. "The sponsor response has been strong," she said. "If you delay now, it makes everyone look disorganized. Then tell them the truth." "What truth?" "The position wasn't approved. They know it's pending." "Do they know what it's pending on?" Her eyes moved to the copies in my hand. "You've been going through the operating budget." "Yes. You don't understand how community development works. I understand subtraction. That's insulting. It isn't personal. Your proposed costs almost equal the grant. My work would bring in more money. Later. You have to invest first. With the trust. With money designated for workforce service. currently used for workforce service. Her mouth tightened. The library can't stay exactly as Stanley left it. I haven't asked it to. It feels like you're measuring every change against whether he personally approved it. He left questions. I'm answering them. That caught her attention. What questions? I slid the copies into my document case. Trust questions. She looked at the red folder. I opened it and checked the contents. Annual reports, renewal letters, correspondence, tax summaries. Stanley's latest review copy was there. One plastic sleeve was empty. The tab said, Board Plans. What was in this sleeve? I asked. I don't know. You went through the folder. I looked for budgets. Where are the board plans? I didn't see any. Did Eric take them? No. Did you? No. Then why is the sleeve empty? It may have been empty already. Stanley didn't label empty sleeves. I checked the papers again. The missing item wasn't proof of anything by itself. It was another question. Where's Stanley's letter? I asked. Whitney crossed her arms. I didn't bring memorial materials. I asked Eric yesterday, and he had a board meeting. He sat through your presentation, which you stopped. The board stopped it. Because you arrived with an unsigned form like it was a weapon. It was a blank piece of paper. You knew what it would do. So did you. That's why you brought it to my kitchen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Whitney's eyes filled. The tears came quickly, but her voice stayed controlled. I have worked for months to help this family. How? I've handled calls. I've handled the memorial. I've kept Eric functioning. And I'm grateful when help is requested. She wiped beneath one eye. You think I'm using Stanley? I think you counted your salary before asking me. That isn't fair. It's in your packet. She picked up her purse. If this grant fails, people will know why. That was not quite a threat. It was close enough to hear. Are you planning to tell them? I won't have to. Sponsors ask questions. Answer accurately. She looked toward Amy's closed door. You may control the form, Ruth. You don't control how this looks. Then she walked out. My phone vibrated before the door closed behind her. Whitney had posted a photograph from the sponsor breakfast. She stood beside Stanley's enlarged portrait. The caption thanked the community for supporting her new leadership at the library. It had already been shared by Eric. Under the photograph, people were congratulating her. One wrote, Stanley would be proud. Another asked when Whitney would officially begin. Whitney replied with a folded hand symbol and wrote, We're building on a wonderful foundation. Eric's share had no comment. He had simply placed her version in front of everyone he knew. I took screenshots. Then I called him. He answered with, I'm at work. Remove the post. What post? The one you shared. It's about Dad. It calls Whitney's leadership new. She doesn't have the job. It doesn't say she's the director. It allows people to believe she is. I can't control what people assume. You help them assume it. He lowered his voice. Mom, she's trying to keep sponsors interested by announcing herself beside your father's picture. It's one photograph. Remove it. It's her page. You shared it. He was quiet. Then he said, If I remove it now, people will think something's wrong. Something is wrong. Can we handle it privately? That option ended when you shared it publicly. I heard a door close on his end. Whitney says you accused her of taking papers. She entered my house and removed a folder. With my permission, you didn't have permission to give. She returned it. One sleeve is empty. I don't know anything about that. Where are the board plans? Dad may have moved them. Then help me look. I can't keep leaving work every time you have a question. I pressed my hand against the library work table. You found time for 3 memorial meetings. That's different. Yes. He heard what I meant. Mom, please don't turn everything into a test. I asked you to return a letter. I told you it's safe. Have you seen it? Not today. Have you seen it since Whitney took the memorial box? He didn't answer. Eric? No. Then you don't know it's safe. His voice hardened. I trust my wife, and I trusted my son with it. That landed between us. I heard him breathe through his nose. Are you going to renew the grant? I haven't decided. If you don't, the library loses programs. Whitney's proposal is what removes program money. That isn't how budgeting works. I read the budget this morning. You're acting like you understand the whole operation after one meeting. I've read the reports for 14 years. With Dad, beside your father. He went quiet again. Then he said, "People are starting to ask questions. Answer them." What am I supposed to say? That the position isn't approved. The grant is under review. That makes you look angry. I am angry. It makes this look personal. It became personal when my husband's memorial became a job presentation. He sighed. I'll ask Whitney to edit the post. Remove your share. I'll think about it. He ended the call. Amy came out of her office. She had heard enough to understand. I called Whitney, she said. I told her the post wasn't authorized. What did she say? That it doesn't make an official claim. That's Eric's answer too. Amy held out her phone. Whitney had edited the caption. She added one word. Proposed? Now it thanked the community for supporting her proposed new leadership at the library. The comments stayed. The photographs stayed. Eric's share stayed. Amy sat across from me. I can issue a board statement. Not yet. Why? Because then Stanley's memorial becomes a public argument 4 days before it happens. It may become one anyway. I know. I packed the copied budgets into my case. Amy looked toward the front door. If the post remains, silence may look like agreement. I know that too. That was the first real price I paid. Correcting Whitney publicly would pull Stanley's name into a fight before his memorial. Staying quiet would let people believe I had approved her role. I chose silence for the moment. It cost me by lunchtime. I stopped at the grocery store on the way home. I needed milk, bread, and coffee filters. Near the produce section, a library volunteer recognized me. I had seen him repairing drills that morning. He touched my arm gently. I'm sorry about Stanley. Thank you. He was a good man. Yes, he was. He nodded toward my cart. I hope all this funding trouble gets worked out. I kept one hand on the handle. What have you heard? Just that the family grant might be held up. Who said that? It's going around among volunteers. What else is going around? He looked uncomfortable. That there are disagreements about the new director. There is no new director. I saw Whitney's announcement. It wasn't a board announcement. He glanced past me as if he wished someone else would enter the aisle. Well, I hope the evening classes don't get caught in the middle. So do I. He gave me a sympathetic look. It was the kind people give when they believe you're upset, but dangerous to argue with. I know grief makes decisions hard, he said. Whitney's language had traveled faster than her job title. I set a bag of apples in my cart. The grant has always required review. I'm sure it has. He didn't sound sure. He excused himself and walked away. I stood beside the apples until another shopper needed the space. At home, my answering machine showed 4 messages. 2 offered condolences. 1 was from a sponsor asking whether Saturday's program had changed. The last was from Eric. Mom, please don't discuss trust business with volunteers. People are nervous. I erased only that one. Then I took the small brass key from the back of my jewelry drawer. Stanley had given me the duplicate letter several months earlier. We were leaving the bank after reviewing the safe deposit box. He placed the envelope inside and said, "That stays here." Eric has the original. I had asked why we needed 2. Because 1 copy is hope, he said. 2 is planning. At the time, I rolled my eyes. That sounded like Stanley. Half practical, half pleased with himself. Now I put the key in my purse and drove to the bank. The woman at the counter checked my identification. She brought the metal box into a private room and left me alone. Inside were property papers, insurance copies, and a small cloth bag containing my mother's ring. The envelope lay beneath them. Stanley had written duplicate on the front. The seal was unbroken. I sat at the narrow table. For several minutes, I held it without opening it. This was supposed to be read with Eric. Stanley had trusted him to bring the original when the family gathered. I still wanted him to do that. Opening my copy alone felt like admitting he might not. I put the envelope back. Then I thought of the empty sleeve, the missing program item, Eric's unchanged post. I took it out again. Stanley had made the duplicate for safekeeping. He had given it to me. I wasn't taking anything from Eric by reading it. I opened the envelope carefully. The letter was 3 pages long. Stanley had signed the last page in blue ink. He had dated it in June. The first lines were personal. Ruth and Eric, if you're reading this, then I didn't get the extra time I kept asking for. I'm sorry about that. I know it leaves work for both of you. I stopped there. The room had no clock. I heard a cart rolling somewhere beyond the door. I continued. He thanked me for our marriage without dressing it up. He told Eric he loved him. He said he was proud of the man Eric could be when he stopped waiting for someone else to make the uncomfortable choice. I read that sentence twice. Then Stanley wrote about the library, the Great Plains tool. Library does not belong to us. My name there is not something to inherit. Neither is a board seat, a title, or attention from people who liked what we funded. My hands went cold. He continued, protect the library if it remains a place of service. Do not protect a building, a position, or our family pride just because my name is attached. The trust money should follow the work. It should keep tools in people's hands and help adults learn useful skills. There was more. He asked us not to turn his memorial into a long list of accomplishments. He wanted people to talk about the work itself. He mentioned the evening classes, the fee waivers, the repaired tools. Near the end, he wrote, if the library forgets its purpose, don't punish it. Be honest about what changed. Then put the support where the purpose still lives. I lowered the paper. Until then, I had wanted 2 things. I wanted my place restored in the memorial. I wanted the grant protected from Whitney's salary proposal. Neither was enough. My name was back in the program. Her photograph was out. That hadn't stopped the post. Blocking one position also wouldn't answer Stanley's request. The board could remove Whitney's proposal and continue assuming the grant belonged to them. The problem was larger than her title. Everyone had begun treating Stanley's support as family property that Eric would inherit and Whitney could spend. Even I had been thinking of the library as something I needed to preserve because Stanley loved it. His letter said the building wasn't the point. The service was. I read all 3 pages again. Then I slid them into a clear sleeve I found inside the box. I returned the letter to its envelope but didn't reseal it. I took it home with me. That was another cost. The duplicate had been safe in the bank. Bringing it home meant I accepted responsibility for what Stanley asked. I locked it inside the document case and put the case beneath my bed. At 4:30, Amy emailed the final memorial proof. The printer needed approval before 5. The family letter remained in the program. Reader to be confirmed. I called Eric one more time. He answered after 6 rings. I'm busy. I need you to bring your father's original tonight. I can't. Why? Whitney says the family letter may not fit anymore. It's already in the final program. She thinks the sponsor section is too short. This isn't her decision. She organized the event for herself. Mom, stop. No, your father gave you that envelope before any memorial existed. We don't even know what he wrote. I'm asking you to find out. Eric lowered his voice. Whitney thinks reading a private letter in public could be awkward. Then bring it to me. I'll decide what part is private. He gave it to me. He trusted you to read it. I said I'll handle it. There was that word again. I looked at the document case beneath my bed. Do you know where the letter is right now? A long pause followed. Finally, he said, It's with Whitney. That's not a location. I have to go. Eric. But he had already hung up. I approved the memorial proof at 4:52. Then I opened Nathan's list of qualifying organizations. Central Nebraska Community College appeared halfway down the page. Beside it was a short description of its adult trades program. I took out my notebook and wrote 3 new questions. What work would the college support? How quickly could the library protect its current programs? What would serving Stanley's purpose cost me now? I closed the notebook and called the college the next morning. I didn't mention Whitney. I didn't mention Eric. I asked for the adult trades program. A woman transferred me twice. Then a program coordinator answered. "My name is Ruth Hamilton," I said. "I'm reviewing a possible charitable grant." "What kind of grant?" "Workforce training. $72,000. He became quiet for half a second. Then he said, "All right, what would you like to know?" "What do you need? That's a large question. It's a large grant." He asked whether I wanted a written proposal. Eventually. "First, tell me what's already happening." He described evening courses for adults, basic electrical work, welding, equipment maintenance, tool safety. Some students were changing careers. Others needed certifications for better jobs. "What stops people from finishing?" I asked. "Usually schedule, fees, or transportation. Which of those can this money address?" "Fees and additional evening instruction, possibly more open lab hours. Would it pay for a new director?" "No." His answer came so quickly I smiled. What would it pay for? Instructors, protective equipment, materials, tool replacement, fee assistance. Those were ordinary things. Stanley would have understood everyone. "Can I visit today? We have an open lab at 11. I'll be there." Central Nebraska Community College wasn't far. Still, I left early. I wore the same navy jacket from my meeting with Amy. The duplicate letter remained locked at home. I carried Stanley's latest grant notes and Nathan's eligibility list. The trades building smelled like cut metal and floor cleaner. The coordinator met me near the entrance. He didn't give me a polished tour. I appreciated that. He showed me a room with electrical training panels mounted along one wall. Several adults were practicing basic connections. In another area, 2 welding booths were closed because the ventilation needed service. "How long have those been unavailable?" I asked. 3 weeks. "How much is the repair?" "A little over $8,000. We moved to the tool room. Some equipment belonged to the college. Some had been donated by local employers. A row of safety helmets sat on a shelf. Several had cracks near the adjustment bands. "Those need replacing," I said. "Yes. Why haven't you?" "Budget timing." I had heard that phrase at the library. Here, no one used it to hide a salary. The coordinator handed me a 1-page summary. It listed current enrollment, waiting lists, completion rates, and equipment needs. Nothing had my name on it. Nothing had Stanley's. "Would the program accept a restricted purpose?" I asked. "Within the grant terms, yes. Adult instruction, equipment, materials, and fee support? Yes, no promotional position." He looked puzzled. "We don't have one proposed." "Good." We sat in a plain office beside the lab. I asked how quickly they could submit a full request. "By Monday." "The trust deadline is Wednesday. We can have it tomorrow." That was the first time my new plan produced something useful. The college had qualifying work. It had immediate needs. It could document them before the deadline. I wasn't moving money to punish the library. I was checking whether Stanley's purpose had somewhere else to go. "Send the request directly to me," I said. He wrote down my email. "Should we include recognition plans?" "No. We usually offer naming acknowledgement for grants of this size. I don't want a room named. A tool fund? No. What should we call it? Adult Trades Program Support." He nodded and crossed out a line on his form. That tiny action settled me more than any sponsor tribute had. On my way out, one of the welding booths opened. An instructor carried out a metal frame and set it on a work table. The weld wasn't pretty. It held. I sat in my car and called Amy. "I need the library's contingency plan," I said. "For what? If the grant isn't renewed?" She didn't answer immediately. "Are you declining it?" "I'm reviewing every qualifying option." "What other option?" "Another workforce program." "Which one? I'm not discussing that yet." "Ruth, the board needs to know. The board needs to know how it will protect existing services without assuming my decision." She lowered her voice. "Whitney is already telling people the grant is being used against her. Then give the board numbers instead of stories. What exactly do you want? A budget without the grant. Keep fee waivers, evening access, repairs, and current instructors if possible. That may require reserves. Show me." And the proposed position? Don't include it, she'll object. She doesn't have the job. Amy exhaled. I can prepare something by tonight. Send it to the full board. Do you want me to say why? Yes. Say the trustee is reviewing other qualifying recipients. That was the point where my strategy stopped being private. I knew Amy would tell the board. I knew Eric would learn. I said it anyway. At noon, I went home and made soup. I used the last container Stanley had labeled in the freezer. Potato, he had written. Too much pepper. It did have too much pepper. I ate it at the table with the college summary beside my bowl. My phone rang 3 times. The first call was from Eric. I let it go to the answering machine. Mom, Amy says you're considering another organization. Call me before you do anything. The second was Whitney. She didn't leave a message. The third was Amy. The printer delivered the programs, she said. Is the correct version printed? Yes. Did you check every page? I did. Is the letter listed? Yes. Is my name there? Yes. Is Whitney described as community director? No. Then I'll come see them. At the library, 4 boxes sat beside Amy's office. She opened the top one. The program looked simpler than the drafts. Stanley's photograph was on the front. This time, no part of me had been cropped out because they had used a different picture. He stood alone beside the first row of donated tools. Inside, my name appeared under personal reflections. The family letter appeared after the welcome. Whitney's future vision section had become library update. Amy was listed as the speaker. I looked up. You're giving the update. The board decided it should come from the chair. When? This morning by email. Did Eric vote? Yes. How? He abstained. That was not courage. It was no longer permission either. Whitney knows, I told her. How did she respond? She said the event would look disjointed. It will look like a memorial. Amy closed the box. She also said she won't help with setup unless her role is restored. Can you manage without her? Yes. There was no hesitation. Then let her decide. Amy studied me. You've changed. I stopped asking for my chair back. What are you asking for now? The work to stay honest. Her eyes moved toward the college summary in my hand. Is that the other recipient? Yes. She read the heading, Central Nebraska Community College. I visited this morning. What would they do with the money? Adult instruction, equipment, fees, evening lab hours. Amy sat down. That would qualify. Nathan will decide whether the request meets the terms. I thought you decided I'd choose. He authenticates and processes. She nodded. I was glad she understood the difference. Amy took the top program from the box again. If the library loses the grant, I'll have to explain it. You should. People will blame you. They already do. They may blame Stanley. No, they won't. How can you be sure? Because the trust decision will be mine. I wasn't ready to tell her about the duplicate letter. I wasn't ready to tell anyone. Amy looked older than she had on Monday. I let this get away from me, she said. You let someone treat a proposal like an appointment. Yes. And you let the memorial help sell it. Yes. I waited. She didn't add an excuse. That mattered. Send me the contingency budget tonight, I said. I will. Before I left, I took 6 printed programs, 1 for my records, 1 for the trust file, 4 in case someone tried to replace them. At home, Eric's truck was waiting again. This time he couldn't enter. He stood on the porch with the memorial box at his feet. I carried the programs up the walkway. You brought the letter? I brought everything Whitney gave me. I unlocked the door. He reached for the handle. Leave the box in the kitchen, I said. He followed me inside. I placed the programs on the table. He looked at the first page. They removed Whitney. They removed a title she didn't have. She spent weeks organizing this, and then threatened not to help. She was angry. So was I. I still showed up. Eric set the memorial box on a chair. Mom, what are you doing with the grant? Reviewing another recipient. You can't decide this in 2 days. I've been reviewing the library for 14 years. You know what I mean? Yes. You think decisions count only when you're present. He opened the box. Inside were sponsor letters, table plans, printed photographs, and a stack of receipts. He moved each item onto the table. No white envelope appeared. "Where is it?" I asked. He searched again. "It should be here." "You said you brought everything." I did. "Then it wasn't in the box." He checked a side pocket. Nothing. "Call Whitney. Mom, call her now." He took out his phone and walked into the hall. I could hear his sigh. "Where's Dad's envelope?" A pause. "No, the sealed one." Another pause. "When?" His voice changed. "Why would you do that?" I stood beside the kitchen table. Eric came back slowly. "What did she say?" "She moved some things." "Where?" "She won't tell me while you're here." "That's an answer you accepted?" "No." "Then call again." "She says this is between us. It became between us when she took your father's letter." He looked at the open box. "You told Amy you're giving the grant away. I told her I'm reviewing options. Whitney says you already chose the college." "She knows which college?" Amy told the board. "Someone told Whitney." There it was. The useful result had given her a target. Eric pushed the receipts back into the box. "She's calling sponsors now." "To say what?" "That you're moving Stanley's money away from his library." I closed the box. The trust money was never his library's property. People won't see it that way. Then you have a chance to explain. He looked at me. "I don't know how to explain what you're doing. Start by asking your wife where she put your father's letter." He stared at me for a moment. Then he picked up the memorial box. "You're making this impossible." "No, I'm asking you to do one uncomfortable thing. She won't talk to me when she's angry. Then wait until she's finished. The memorial is in 2 days." "I know." He carried the box to the door. "Dad would hate this." "Which part?" "All of it. That's why he wrote the letter." Eric left without answering. At 9 that evening, Amy sent the contingency budget. The library could preserve its safety classes and part-time instructors through December. Fee waivers could continue if repair spending was reduced. Evening access would drop from 4 nights a week to 2. The library would use almost half its reserves. Whitney's proposed position disappeared completely. At the bottom, Amy had written, "This is possible, but painful." I printed it and placed it beside the college summary. One choice supported work at the college. The other kept familiar work alive at the library. Neither paper mentioned family. My phone rang at 9:30. Whitney's name appeared. I answered. "I want to come over," she said. "It's late, then tomorrow morning." "Why?" "Because this has gone too far. You know where Stanley's letter is. I'm not discussing that by phone. Bring it tomorrow." She paused. "I'll come at 8. She arrived at 7:45 carrying a white bakery bag and a garment bag. I led her into the kitchen. She placed the bakery bag on the table. I brought cinnamon rolls. "You didn't need to. I know you like them. Stanley liked them." I made coffee anyway. I poured 2 cups and sat across from her. She hung the garment bag on the pantry door. "What's that?" "A dress for Saturday. I have a dress. This one photographs better." I looked at her. She lowered her eyes. "That came out wrong." It came out clearly. She pushed the bakery bag toward me. "I'm trying to make peace." "Then give me the letter." Her fingers tightened around her cup. "I don't have it with me." "Where is it?" "I don't think it should be read publicly. That isn't your decision. It became my responsibility when Eric gave me the memorial materials. He gave you an envelope to protect. He asked me to organize everything. Organizing doesn't include removing his father's words." She stirred coffee she hadn't tasted. The letter could be very personal. "Have you read it?" Her spoon stopped. "No." "Then you don't know." "I know Stanley wrote it while he was ill." "So?" "People say things differently when they're afraid." Stanley wasn't confused. "I didn't say confused. You were getting there." She placed the spoon beside her cup. "This is exactly what I mean. You hear an attack in every sentence. I hear you avoiding one question." She looked toward the garment bag. "We want you beside us Saturday. I'm already in the program. I mean publicly beside us. We can enter together, sit together. You can speak as long as you need. Amy already gave me time. I can introduce you. I don't need you to." Her eyes filled. I'm offering you a place in your own family. You shouldn't have taken it first. That isn't fair. No, it isn't. She wiped one cheek. Eric is falling apart. Then stop asking him to choose your job over his father's memorial. I'm not. You brought a dress instead of a letter. The tears stopped as quickly as they had started. I worked for that position. Then let the board consider it without trust money. There is no position without the grant. That's what Amy said. You're taking my career away. You don't have the job. Everyone knows I was getting it. That's the problem. She stood and walked to the pantry door. She unhooked the garment bag. You'll look better in this color. I'm not wearing it. Fine. She laid it across the back of her chair. What would make you renew? A plan that protects the work. We gave you one. You gave me your salary. My salary is part of the work. It's almost the whole grant. That's dishonest. It's arithmetic. She stepped away from the table. If you send that money to the college, people will know you did it because of me. They may believe that. And you're comfortable with that? No. She waited. I didn't offer anything else. Then renew it, she said. The board can postpone my position. For how long? Until emotions settle. There it was. She wanted the money secured first. Her title could wait. What happens after renewal? The board reviews the position. With the funding safely in its account, it's the library's grant. No, it's a discretionary grant. You keep hiding behind that word. I'm standing in front of it. Her face hardened. If you pull the funding, the volunteers will blame you. The sponsors will blame you. People who loved Stanley will wonder why his wife dismantled his work. You've already told them. I've told them there is uncertainty. You created uncertainty before I decided anything. You created it when you refused to sign. I stood and carried both coffee cups to the sink. Take the dress with you. She didn't move. And the cinnamon rolls? Take those too. I brought them for you. You brought them for a signature. She picked up the bakery bag. At the door, she said, I tried to include you. I opened it for her. No. You tried to seat me where I'd look included. She carried the dress and the rolls to her car. 10 minutes later, Amy called. You need to see Whitney's post. I don't. Ruth, I opened it. Whitney had used the same photograph from the sponsor breakfast. This time, the caption was longer. She wrote that the library faced an unexpected review of its traditional Hamilton funding. She said evening access, adult safety classes, and tool assistance might be reduced. She asked the community to stand behind Stanley's vision during a painful family transition. She didn't name me. She didn't need to. The comments filled quickly. Some people offered donations. Others asked why the family would interrupt funding now. One person wrote, Stanley never would have allowed this. Another wrote, grief shouldn't erase his promises. I read that one twice. What is the board doing? I asked. A statement is being drafted. By whom? Me. What will it say? That the grant is discretionary and no renewal decision has been announced. Include that Whitney's position is not approved. That may look retaliatory. It's factual. All right, include that current programs remain open. For now. I heard the strain in her voice. What changed? 2 sponsors paused their discussions this morning. Because of the post, they said they need clarity about leadership. What discussions? One was considering equipment support. The other was considering funds for expanded hours. Were either committed? No. Did Whitney know that? Yes. So she announced possible program cuts while interfering with the support meant to prevent them. I wouldn't phrase it that way publicly. You don't have to. Just correct the facts. Amy promised a statement within the hour. It appeared shortly after 10. It said the memorial would proceed as planned. It said no community director had been appointed. It also said the Hamilton grant was subject to annual trustee review. The statement was calm. It didn't travel. Whitney's post had already been shared more than 100 times. Amy's correction had 12 shares by noon. That was the reversal. I had the correct program. I had the documents. I had the authority. Whitney had the faster story. At 1, Eric came to my porch. He didn't knock. He stood where I could see him through the front window. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Did you know about the post?" I asked. She showed me before she published it. "And you approved?" I told her to remove anything personal. She called it a family transition. She didn't name you. Everyone knows who controls the trust now. He looked exhausted. "Sign the renewal and this stops." "No." "Then you are choosing this." "I'm choosing to review the grant." 2 days before Dad's memorial. The deadline made the timing. You held it. I stopped and assumed payment. He looked past me into the house. "I don't recognize you right now." I almost laughed. He had known me as the person who fixed the uncomfortable part before he arrived. Of course, I looked different when I stopped. "Where's the letter?" I asked. "Whitney won't tell me." "Why not?" "She says I'll give it to you. Would you?" He looked down. "I don't know." That answer took something from me. Not hope. Hope is too clean a word. It took the excuse I kept making for him. "You're afraid she'll be angry," I said. "My marriage is already under pressure. Your father trusted you. Dad isn't the one I have to live with. No, he isn't." Eric's eyes filled. "Do you even care what happens to us?" "Yes, then stop." "Stop what?" "Using the grant to prove a point." I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "The grant funds work. It isn't a family allowance." "No one said it was." "Whitney called it your father's money. You asked for his files. She planned a salary. You both assumed I would sign. Because he always did. I'm not him. That's obvious." He regretted it. I saw that immediately. He didn't apologize. I held the new house key in my pocket. "You should go. Mom, go home." He walked down the steps. At the driveway, he turned. "If you send the grant away, don't expect Whitney at family dinners. You're offering me a threat she already chose. She's my wife, and you're my son." He got into his truck. I watched until he drove away. Then I went inside and opened Amy's contingency budget again. 2 nights of evening access, reduced repair spending, reserves used through December. That was the price if the library lost the grant. Whitney had made sure everyone would attach that price to my name. I called Amy. "Has the board approved your contingency budget?" "We're voting tonight." "Will it preserve the current instructors?" "Yes." "Fee waivers?" "Yes." "Through the end of the year." "Safety classes?" "Yes." "Then prepare the board to operate without the grant." Amy was silent. "Is that your final decision?" "Not yet. But I should act as though it may be." "Yes." "What about the public pressure?" "I accept it." "And Eric?" I looked at the 6 printed programs on my table. He knows where I stand. After we hung up, I took the unsigned authorization from the document case. I laid it beside Stanley's duplicate letter. Then I called the college and asked them to send their completed request by morning. The request arrived at 8:20 Friday morning. It was 11 pages. I made coffee and read every page at my kitchen table. The college proposed using the grant for evening instruction, equipment repairs, safety gear, and fee assistance. It included the ventilation repair for the closed welding booths. No administrative position was added. No recognition event was proposed. The final page described how many additional adults could attend evening courses if the lab stayed open 2 more nights. I checked the figures twice. Then I called the program coordinator. "If the grant is awarded, can you use it this year?" "Yes." "What happens if enrollment is lower than expected?" "The unused portion stays restricted to the adult trades program. It doesn't move into general administration?" "No." "Can you put that in writing?" "It's on page 9. I found the paragraph. He was right. "What about publicity?" "We would acknowledge the trust in our annual report." "Nothing else?" "Not unless you request it." "I don't." "Understood." I thanked him and hung up. The easier choice was still available. I could renew the library grant. I could ask Amy to postpone Whitney's position. I could tell myself the board had learned its lesson. That would keep the evening schedule intact. It would calm the volunteers. Eric would probably come to my house again without standing outside. People would call me reasonable. Then next year, another plan would arrive built around the same assumption. The money would be treated as belonging to the building. Stanley's name would remain useful. My signature would remain expected. I read his letter once more. The trust money should follow the work. I put it back into the envelope. At 9, I drove to the trust office. I didn't meet with Nathan again. I had already received the explanation I needed. His assistant had prepared 2 direction forms based on my written request. One declined the Great Plains Tool Library renewal. The other directed the same $72,000 to Central Nebraska Community College for its adult trades program. She led me to the same conference room and left me alone. The library's unsigned renewal authorization lay on my left. The college direction lay on my right. I placed Amy's contingency budget between them. I wanted the cost visible, reduced evening access, delayed repairs, reserves used through December. Those consequences were real. So were the welding booths, the fee assistants, the additional lab hours at the college. I couldn't keep both with one grant. That was the rule Stanley and I had written. One annual recipient, one decision. I signed the decline first. Then I signed the college direction. My hand shook only on the date. I checked each page before returning them to the assistant. She compared my signature to the trust record. Then she took the forms into the back office. I waited 40 minutes. No one rushed into the room to stop me. No one offered a better answer. The coffee machine made its usual noise in the lobby. The assistant returned with a stamped copy of each direction. The college request has been confirmed as qualifying, she said. The direction is authenticated. When does it become final? It is final for this grant cycle. That removed the last uncertainty. The library grant hadn't been paused. It had been declined. The same amount hadn't disappeared. It had been redirected. Has notice gone to the library? I asked. Formal notice is scheduled for Monday morning. May I provide an authenticated copy to the board chair before then? Yes. Will the payment amount appear? Yes. It appears on the direction. Thank you. I placed the copies inside the document case. Outside, I sat in my car without starting it. I had made trust decisions with Stanley before. We discussed them over dinner. He read figures aloud. I asked questions from across the table. This one was mine alone. That didn't make it feel powerful. It made it permanent. I called Amy and asked her to meet me at the library at noon. Is this about the grant? She asked. Yes. Should I call the board? No. Why not? I'll explain when I arrive. The memorial hall was being arranged when I got there. Rows of folding chairs faced the lectern. Stanley's tool chest stood beneath his photograph. The sponsor display had been moved to the side wall. Amy was near the back, checking a delivery list. She took one look at the document case and led me into her office. I closed the door. The trust has completed its review, I said. Her face changed. I gave her the authenticated notice. She read the first page, then she read the second. The grant is gone. It has been redirected. To the college. Yes. For the full amount. Yes. She sat down. For a moment, she looked at the paper without speaking. Then she asked, "Why give this to me before formal notice?" Because Whitney intends to present herself tomorrow as the library's new leadership. The board statement corrected that. She hasn't corrected it herself. No. If she repeats it at the memorial, the people in that room need an accurate answer. Amy looked up. You want me to announce this publicly. I want the board chair to explain what the grant decision means, that her position can't be created. Yes. Amy read the notice again. I can confirm the position has no funding. You already confirmed that on Monday. Not in front of the community. That's where she promoted it. Amy pressed her lips together. What if I tell Eric tonight? No, he's a board member. Formal notice goes to the full board Monday. He'll say I hid this from him. You received an advance trustee notice concerning tomorrow's public program. The board hasn't approved any spending against it. That's true. You don't need a vote to state that money wasn't awarded. No. She turned to the college direction. Do they know? They know the grant was approved. They don't know anything about the memorial. Does Whitney know you retained this authority? She knows I control the form. She doesn't know what I decided. And the letter? She doesn't know I have a duplicate. Amy's eyes lifted. You have one? Yes. Signed? Stanley signed both. Where is it? At home. Amy leaned back. Ruth, what are you planning? To ask who's reading the original. You think Whitney won't produce it. I know Eric hasn't seen it. That doesn't mean it's gone. No. If she brings it, then Eric can read it, as Stanley asked. And if she doesn't? I'll read the duplicate. Amy looked through the glass panel in her door. Volunteers were carrying tablecloths into the hall. Should I remove Whitney from the program entirely? No. She asked this morning if she could make brief remarks. What kind of remarks? She said she wants to thank sponsors and speak as family. Did you agree? I told her I would ask you. That was the easier, cruel shortcut. I could keep her away from the lectern. I could let her sit through the whole memorial knowing the title and salary were already gone. Part of me wanted that. It would have spared me a public confrontation. It also would have allowed her to say I silenced her before she could explain. Let her speak, I said. Amy frowned. Are you sure? Yes. How long? 3 minutes. The same amount Whitney had first offered me. I noticed that and almost changed my answer. I didn't. Put her after the sponsor acknowledgments, I said. Before personal reflections. You're allowing her to commit to the public version. I'm allowing her to speak for herself. Amy folded the authenticated notice and returned it to its envelope. When should I announce the grant decision? After the letter. What if the room becomes hostile? State the facts. Don't defend me. What if people ask why? Tell them the trust selected a qualifying workforce program. Should I mention the college use? Yes. Equipment, instruction, and fee support? Yes. She nodded slowly. I can do that. Don't call it Stanley's final direction. It was your decision. Yes. That mattered. His letter guided me. It didn't operate the trust from his grave. I chose. Amy locked the notice in her desk drawer. When we returned to the hall, Whitney was standing beside the lectern. She wore a dark blue dress and held a stack of sponsor cards. The garment bag from my kitchen lay across a nearby chair. She saw me looking at it. I brought the dress in case you changed your mind, she said. I didn't. It would look good in photographs. I'm wearing my own clothes. She tapped the sponsor cards against the lectern. Amy says I can speak. I agreed. Surprise crossed her face. You did? Yes. Well, thank you. You're welcome. She studied me, trying to find the trick. I walked to Stanley's tool chest and checked the top drawer. His pliers were still there. Eric entered through the side door carrying a box of framed photographs. He set it down and came toward us. Are we all behaving today? He asked. Whitney smiled at him. Your mother agreed I should speak. He looked relieved. That's good. I asked, Did you find the letter? His relief disappeared. Not yet. Did you look? We talked about it. That isn't looking. Whitney arranged the sponsor cards. We don't need to settle every detail right now. The program says, family letter. We can replace it with a family reflection. No. She kept her eyes on the cards. Ruth, the programs are already printed. Most people won't notice one change. I will. Eric touched my arm. Can we get through tomorrow first? The letter is part of tomorrow. He removed his hand. Whitney said, We'll handle it. I looked from her to Eric. Neither would say where the original was. I didn't show them the duplicate. Amy came from her office with the final schedule. She handed copies to all three of us. Whitney's remarks were listed for 3 minutes. My personal reflection followed. The family letter came next. Eric read that line and folded his schedule. I'll figure something out, he said. Find the envelope, I replied. At home that evening, I chose a plain black dress. It reached below my knees and had pockets. I put one printed program in the left pocket. Stanley's duplicate letter went into the right. The document case held the authenticated copies from my records, but Amy had the notice she would use. I didn't answer the phone again that night. On Saturday morning, I arrived before the doors opened. The cream ribbons were tied to the aisle chairs. Coffee stood ready on a long table. The sponsor logos remained on the side wall. Stanley's photograph hung behind the lectern. Whitney was testing the microphone. Eric sat alone in the front row, turning the folded schedule over in his hands. I took the chair beside him. He looked at me, then at the pocket holding his father's letter. He didn't know what was inside. "Did she give it back?" I asked. "No. Did she tell you where it is?" "No." The front doors opened. People began filling the hall. Eric faced forward. So did I. The first person through the doors was a retired electrician who had taught Saturday classes with Stanley. He hugged me and held on longer than usual. "I brought one of Stan's old lesson sheets," he said. That would have pleased him. More people entered behind him. Some stopped at the tool chest. Others signed the guest book. A few took pictures beside Stanley's photograph. Whitney greeted everyone near the aisle. She thanked sponsors by name. She accepted compliments about the room. When someone congratulated her on the new position, she smiled and said, "We're excited about what comes next." She didn't correct them. Eric heard it twice. The second time, I looked at him. He stared at the schedule in his hands. By 2, nearly every chair was filled. People stood along the back wall. Amy went to the lectern. She welcomed everyone and asked them to silence their phones. Then she looked toward Stanley's photograph. Stanley Hamilton believed useful things should be used, she said. Tools, time, experience, even an empty building. He gave all 4 to this library. That sounded like him. Amy spoke for 5 minutes. She didn't mention the grant. She didn't mention Whitney's proposed position. She thanked the volunteers and introduced a short video. The lights dimmed. Stanley appeared on the screen wearing his brown work shirt. He was showing someone how to replace a broken drill chuck. His voice filled the hall. "Don't force it. If you're forcing it, you've missed something." Several people laughed. I did too. The sound came out before I could stop it. Eric looked at me. For 1 second, he smiled the way he used to when Stanley corrected both of us at once. Then the video ended. The sponsor acknowledgments followed. Amy kept them brief. When she finished, she said, "Whitney Hamilton helped coordinate today's gathering. She would like to offer a few remarks." Whitney stood. She smoothed the front of her dark blue dress and walked to the lectern. A printed program lay there. She rested one hand on it. "Thank you, Amy," she began. Her voice was warm and steady. She thanked the businesses that provided food, printing, and equipment for the memorial. She thanked the volunteers who arranged the hall. Then she turned slightly toward Stanley's photograph. "When Stanley welcomed me into this family, he also welcomed me into his commitment to this community." I felt Eric move beside me. Whitney continued. "Over the past several months, I've worked with sponsors and volunteers to imagine the library's next stage. That work matters even more now." Several people nodded. She spoke about partnerships. She spoke about visibility. She spoke about reaching new supporters. Then she said, "As I step into a larger leadership role here, I intend to protect what Stanley built while helping it grow." There it was, not a formal title, not an approved appointment, a settled future spoken into a microphone. She thanked the audience for trusting her. A few people clapped. The applause spread because people are polite at memorials. Whitney smiled. She looked toward me as if the matter had finally become too public to stop. I stood. She was still behind the lectern. "Before you sit down," I said, "who will read my husband's letter?" The applause ended. Whitney's smile remained, but only around her mouth. We adjusted that portion. "Who will read it?" She glanced at Eric. He sat very still. I waited. Whitney moved her hand across the printed program. The letter wasn't suitable. "Where is it?" Her cheeks became red. "This isn't the time. It's listed next." People began looking down at their programs. Someone in the back shifted a metal chair. I asked again, "What did you do with Stanley's letter?" Whitney looked directly at me. "We threw it away." The ventilation fan hummed above the tool cages. Near the back, someone set down a paper cup. I turned to Eric. His shoulders had gone stiff. He didn't speak. I looked at Whitney again. "You threw away the letter Stanley gave Eric?" She held the sides of the lectern. It didn't fit what we planned. A woman near the aisle whispered, "Oh my God." Whitney heard her. Her voice became sharper. "It was a private family item. I made a judgment call. You told Eric it was safe. I told him I handled it. Where did you throw it away?" "That doesn't matter now. It mattered to Stanley." Eric finally stood. "Mom." I looked at him. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I reached into the right pocket of my dress. Whitney watched my hand. I took out the plain envelope marked duplicate. Her face changed before I opened it. "You didn't know Stanley made two," I said. She shook her head once. Eric stared at the envelope. "Dad gave you a copy?" "For safekeeping." I walked to the lectern. Whitney didn't move at first. Amy stood beside her chair. "Whitney," she said quietly. Whitney stepped aside. I placed the envelope on the lectern. I removed the 3 pages and showed Stanley's blue signature. "This is the signed duplicate." No one applauded. I was grateful for that. I looked at Eric. "Some parts belong to our family. I won't read those aloud." His eyes lowered. I folded the first page back. "Stanley also wrote about this library. That part belongs here." I began where his words turned to the work. "The Great Plains Tool. Library does not belong to us. My name there is not something to inherit. Neither is a board seat, a title, or attention from people who liked what we funded." The room stayed quiet. Whitney stood several feet away. Her arms hung at her sides. I continued. "Protect the library if it remains a place of service. Do not protect a building, a position, or our family pride just because my name is attached. The trust money should follow the work. It should keep tools in people's hands and help adults learn useful skills." Someone near the center began crying softly. I didn't look up. I read the section about evening classes. I read the line about fee waivers. I read his request that repaired tools matter more than recognition. Then I reached the final paragraph. "If the library forgets its purpose, don't punish it. Be honest about what changed. Then put the support where the purpose still lives." I stopped there. The remaining lines were for Eric and me. I folded the pages carefully. That is what Stanley asked. I placed them back in the envelope. Whitney stepped toward the lectern. "You made a copy to use against me. Stanley made it. You knew I was speaking today. Yes. You let me stand up there. You asked to speak." Amy came forward. "I need to complete the library update," she said. Whitney looked at her. "Now?" "Yes." Amy held an envelope from her office. She removed the authenticated notice. Eric saw the trust heading. "Mom," he said. I returned to my chair but didn't sit. Amy took the lectern. "The board needs to correct 2 public misunderstandings," she said. Her voice carried without effort. "First, no community director has been appointed. The proposed position was discussed, but it was never approved. People looked at Whitney. She stared at Amy." Amy continued. "Second, the Hamilton Family Charitable Trust grant is reviewed annually. It does not belong to the library, and renewal was never automatic." A man near the sponsor display folded his arms. Amy held up the notice. "The board received authenticated notice yesterday. The trust did not renew the library's annual grant." A sound moved through the hall, not a gasp, more like several people breathing at once. Whitney stepped forward. "You knew yesterday?" Amy didn't turn. The proposed community director position depended entirely on that grant. Without the funding, the position cannot be created. Whitney's face lost all color. Amy read from the second page. "The same $72,000 has been awarded to Central Nebraska Community College's Adult Trades Program. The funds will support evening instruction, equipment, safety materials, and fee assistance." The retired electrician in the first row nodded slowly. Someone behind him said, "So the money is still going to trades?" "Yes," Amy said. "It remains within the trust's workforce purpose." Whitney reached the lectern. "This is retaliation." Amy lowered the notice. "The board had not hired you. You let me work for months. You volunteered while a proposal was under discussion. You told me startup hours could be considered. They were never authorized. Whitney looked toward Eric. Say something. Everyone turned with her. Eric stood beside his chair. He looked at the duplicate envelope in my hand. Then he looked at his wife. You threw Dad's letter away. I told you it wasn't right for the program. You told me you moved it. I did move it. To the trash. You were letting her use it to control everything. Eric closed his eyes. I gave it to you. You gave me the memorial materials. I gave you Dad's letter because you said you'd keep it safe. Whitney glanced around the room. This is a family argument. It should never have become public. I answered from the aisle. You made your position public. That has nothing to do with the letter. It has everything to do with why you removed it. She pointed toward the trust notice. You were always going to take the money. No. You visited the college before you told us. I told Amy I was reviewing other recipients. You hid the decision until it was authenticated. You wanted to humiliate me here. I asked you for the letter at my kitchen table. I asked Eric in the parking lot. I asked again while the program was being printed. People were watching her now, not me. The belief in the room had changed. This was no longer a grieving widow interrupting Stanley's plan. It was an unapproved employee asking why promised money hadn't arrived. Amy placed the notice on the lectern. The board's contingency budget protects current instructors, fee waivers, and safety classes through the end of the year. We will reduce evening hours and seek replacement support. A volunteer near the back asked, Why weren't we told the position depended on the whole grant? Amy answered, The board should have been clearer. I should have been clearer. She didn't blame Whitney alone. That helped. Whitney picked up her sponsor cards. You're all acting like I did nothing for this place. Amy said, That isn't what anyone said. I brought in sponsors. 2 discussions were paused after your public post. I was trying to save the programs. You announced cuts before the board approved its contingency plan. Whitney turned to Eric again. Are you coming? He looked at her. Then he looked at Stanley's photograph. I'm staying for Dad's memorial. Her mouth opened slightly. It was the first time I had heard him choose an action she didn't want. It didn't repair anything. It was still an action. Whitney gathered her purse and the garment bag from the side chair. As she crossed the hall, no one stopped her. The front doors closed behind her. Amy waited until the room settled. Then she looked at me. Ruth, would you like to continue your reflection? I went back to the lectern with Stanley's duplicate in my hand. This time, his photograph was behind me, and Whitney's future was no longer written into his name. I unfolded 1 page, but I didn't read more from it. Instead, I told them about the first donated wrench. It was rusted near the jaw. Stanley cleaned it at our kitchen sink because the library had no working water yet. I had complained about the stain it left. He said, That wrench still has work in it. I told the room that was Stanley's measure for most things, not whether they looked impressive, whether they could still be useful. Then I thanked everyone who had taught a class, repaired a tool, or helped someone finish a job. I kept my reflection under 10 minutes. When I stepped away, Eric remained standing. Amy asked if he wanted to speak. He shook his head. The retired electrician read from Stanley's old lesson sheet instead. It contained instructions for checking a power cord before using a tool. Stanley had written, Don't trust a cord because it behaved yesterday. That got another small laugh. The memorial continued. People shared stories. Some were funny. One man admitted he had returned a socket set with 2 pieces missing, then avoided Stanley for a month. Stanley found me at the hardware store, he said. He handed me the replacement bill and asked if I wanted to pay now or volunteer Saturday. What did you choose? Amy asked. I volunteered for 6 years. That sounded right. Whitney didn't return. After the final reflection, Amy thanked everyone and invited them to stay for coffee. I put Stanley's duplicate back in my pocket. Before I reached the aisle, people surrounded me. Some offered condolences. Some apologized. A woman who had shared Whitney's post touched my hand. I didn't know the money was still supporting training, she said. It is. I thought the library was closing. It isn't. She looked embarrassed. I should have checked. Yes, I didn't tell her it was fine. It wasn't a terrible mistake. It also wasn't mine to erase. Near the sponsor wall, 2 volunteers asked Amy about reduced evening hours. She opened the contingency budget and showed them the figures. That was the practical consequence. The library still had tools. It still had instructors. It no longer had $72,000 expected without a conversation. One sponsor offered to fund the ventilation repairs at the college. Another said he wanted to review the library's equipment list before promising anything. Nothing was fixed in the room. People were finally asking accurate questions. Eric waited beside Stanley's tool chest. When the crowd thinned, he came to me. Can we talk? Not here. Then at your house. No. His face tightened. Mom, I'm sorry. I looked at him. For what? For not stopping her. That's part of it. For giving her the letter. That's another part. I thought she was putting it with the memorial materials. She told you she moved it. You stopped asking. He looked at the floor. I didn't know she threw it away. You knew she wouldn't return it. I was trying to keep my marriage together. And what were you willing to lose? He looked at Stanley's photograph. I don't know. I do. His eyes filled. I wanted to hold him. That didn't mean I should. An embrace would have let him leave with relief before he understood what required repair. He said, I chose her today. You stayed. She's my wife. I know. I have to go home. Yes. But I told her I was staying. I heard you. He waited for praise. I gave him the truth. That was one action, Eric. It doesn't repair weeks of silence. He nodded slowly. What do I do? I'm not giving you a list. How am I supposed to know? You knew enough to hide the meetings. Start there. He put both hands into his pockets. Will you answer if I call? Not today. I walked to Amy's office and retrieved my copy of the authenticated notice. Then I left through the side door. At home, the white bakery bag was still on my counter. Whitney had taken it, then set it down on the porch before leaving. The cinnamon rolls were hard. I threw them away. The next morning, Amy called. The board is meeting tomorrow. What about? Eric submitted his resignation. I sat at the kitchen table. Did he say why? He wrote a statement. Has Whitney seen it? I don't know. What does it say? I think you should hear it from him. I'm not attending a family apology disguised as board business. It isn't an apology to you. It's accountability to the library. That distinction mattered. What time? 6. I agreed to sit in the back. The meeting was open because the board had invited volunteers and sponsors to hear the revised budget. Every chair wasn't filled. About 30 people attended. Eric sat at the table without Whitney. Amy reviewed the contingency plan first. Evening access would be reduced beginning in October. Safety classes and fee waivers would continue. Equipment repairs would be prioritized by risk. No community director position appeared anywhere. Then Eric stood. He held one sheet of paper. I'm resigning from the board effective tonight, he said. His voice shook, but he kept reading. I supported a staffing proposal before its funding was approved. I allowed sponsors to believe the Hamilton grant would continue without confirming that with the trustee. He looked toward me. Then he returned to the page. I also allowed my mother to be excluded from planning for my father's memorial. My wife said my mother wanted privacy. I was present when she said it, and I did not correct her. No one moved. Eric continued. My father gave me the signed original of a family letter. I surrendered it to Whitney when she took over the memorial materials. When my mother asked for it, I failed to recover it. Whitney discarded it, but protecting the original was my responsibility. That was the public acceptance I hadn't expected. He didn't say misunderstanding. He didn't say everyone was grieving. He didn't say Whitney made him. He finished. I can't remain on this board while asking other people to take responsibility I avoided. He signed the statement and gave it to Amy. The board accepted his resignation. There was no applause. After the meeting, Eric approached me near the exit. I posted the statement too, he said. All of it? Yes. Did Whitney agree? No. What happened? She went to stay somewhere else for a few days. I didn't ask where. He looked exhausted. I'm not telling you that so you'll feel sorry for me. Good. I should have resigned sooner. Yes. He nodded. Then he left without asking to come home with me. Amy walked over carrying the revised budget. He did that himself, she said. I know. Does it help? It makes the truth public. That wasn't what I asked. It's what I can answer today. The library board posted Eric's statement beneath its correction. Whitney deleted her sponsor breakfast post that night. The shares remained in other places. So did screenshots. Public lies don't disappear because the original person becomes uncomfortable. 2 days later, Whitney requested time at the next board meeting. Amy called me before placing her on the schedule. Do you know what she wants? She says she needs to correct her role. Letter? Will you attend? Yes. Whitney arrived alone. She didn't carry a presentation. She sat at the end of the table until Amy recognized her. Then she stood. I represented myself publicly as incoming leadership before the board approved any position, she said. That was wrong. Her voice was flat. She looked at Amy, not me. I also used the Hamilton family name in sponsor conversations without asking Ruth. I won't represent myself as speaking for the Hamilton family again. One board member asked about the memorial post. I removed it. Amy said, the board correction remains online. Whitney's jaw tightened. I understand. Then she said, I'm sorry to the board for creating confusion about the position and the grant. It wasn't a warm apology. It was direct. Amy accepted it as a statement, not a restoration. The proposed position has been removed from consideration, she said. Your recorded startup hours will not be paid. Whitney gripped the back of her chair. I understand. She turned toward me. I'm sorry I discarded Stanley's letter. I waited. She added, I thought it would interfere with the memorial. You mean your announcement? Yes. That one word cost her something. I could see it. Why didn't you return it when I asked? I said. Because then Eric would have read it. And it would have made the position look wrong. The position was wrong. The way I used the memorial was wrong. I nodded once. She seemed to expect more. I apologized, she said. I heard you. Do you forgive me? No. Her face stiffened. What else do you want? I want time without pressure from you. How much time? I'll decide. She picked up her purse. At the door, she looked back at me. Eric wants his family back. He knows where I live. She left. The following Monday, the college program coordinator called. The grant paperwork is complete, he said. We're ordering safety equipment first. Good. Your son contacted us. My hand tightened around the phone. What did he want? He asked whether the adult trades program needs volunteers. Did he mention the grant? No. He said he can sort tools, clean equipment, and help with evening setup. Did he ask to be paid? No. What did you tell him? To come Thursday for orientation. After we hung up, I opened my notebook. I wrote, Eric resigned board. Accepted responsibility publicly. Whitney corrected claim. Apologized to board. No forgiveness given. Eric called college without asking me. Then I left the notebook open and waited to see whether he would actually show up Thursday. He did. The coordinator called me Friday morning. Eric arrived early, he said. What did he do? He cleaned the tool room and helped set up the electrical lab. Did he talk about Stanley? Only when someone asked why he was there. What did he say? That he had neglected work his father cared about. I closed my eyes. Did he mention me? No. Did he mention the trust? No. Then let him work. Eric returned the following Thursday. He returned the Thursday after that. He didn't post photographs. He didn't ask the college to praise him. He didn't call me afterward and describe each useful thing he had done. That helped more than a description would have. At the library, the reduced evening schedule began in October. Amy didn't hide it. The notice on the front door explained that 2 nights were temporarily unavailable because annual funding had changed. It also listed the classes and fee waivers that remained. Whitney's name appeared nowhere. The board adopted a new budget rule. Proposed positions had to show committed funding before anyone performed startup work or spoke to sponsors. They also required written consent before using a family name in fundraising. Amy mailed me a copy. At the bottom, she had written, "This should have existed before." I filed it with the grant records. The library didn't close. People adjusted. Several volunteers added Saturday hours. One sponsor paid for replacement safety equipment. Another funded repairs instead of a leadership plan. The loss still showed. The building closed earlier twice a week. A waiting list formed for one evening class. I didn't pretend those things didn't matter. The college put its grant to work quickly. The broken ventilation system was repaired. New helmets arrived. The adult trades program added evening lab time before the end of the term. The money didn't solve every problem there. It did what the request said it would do. 3 weeks after the memorial, I received an email copied to Amy and the library board. It came from Whitney. She had written to every sponsor she contacted. I was not appointed community director of the Great Plains Tool Library. My public statement suggested the position was settled when it was not. Ruth Hamilton did not cancel an existing job. The board had not created one. She also wrote that the trust's annual grant was discretionary and had been awarded to another qualifying workforce program. No mention of grief, no family transition, no suggestion that Stanley's promise had been broken. Whitney ended with, "I won't speak for the Hamilton family or the library in future sponsor communications." It was the correction she should have made at the beginning. She made it because the false version now cost her more than the truth. That didn't make the correction useless. It made it late. Amy confirmed that Whitney had returned the sponsor contact files and removed herself from the planning account. She had no access to the library's email or event records. The board considered the matter closed. I didn't. Family matters don't close because a meeting ends. They change shape. Eric called every Sunday evening. The first 2 times, I let the answering machine take it. His messages were short. "Mom, I worked at the college Thursday. I hope you're all right." He didn't ask about the trust. He didn't ask for a key. On the 3rd Sunday, I answered. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Eric." He seemed surprised I was there. "How are you? I'm managing. Can I come by?" "No." "All right." He didn't argue. We spoke for 7 minutes. He told me the college tool room had been organized badly. I told him Stanley would have reorganized it, then complained no one respected his system. Eric laughed. The sound hurt. It also sounded familiar. Before hanging up, he said, "Can I call next Sunday?" "Yes." He asked again the following week. That mattered too. He no longer treated access as something he kept until I removed it. He asked. After 6 weeks, he invited me to dinner. Not at my house. At his. "Would you be willing to come Sunday?" he asked. "Just dinner. No trust talk." "Will Whitney be there?" "Yes." "Does she want me there?" "She told me to ask you directly." That wasn't my question. He was quiet. Then Whitney's voice came onto the line. "Ruth, I would like you to come. Why? Because you're Eric's mother. You shouldn't need another reason. That reason wasn't enough during the memorial planning. I know. Are you going to ask about the trust? No. Are you going to explain your job again? No. Will you ask me to forgive you?" She paused. "No." I agreed to 1 hour. I drove myself. I kept my coat over the back of my chair. I didn't bring trust papers. I didn't bring Stanley's letter. Whitney made roast chicken. Eric burned the rolls. No one tried to make the evening meaningful. That helped. We discussed a leaking faucet, the weather, and the college tool room. Whitney asked how I was sleeping. "Better," I said. She didn't turn that into a conversation about grief. At the end of the hour, I stood. Eric said, "You don't have to leave yet." I said 1 hour. He nodded. "Thank you for coming." Whitney walked me to the door. "Could we do this again sometime?" she asked. "Maybe." "All right." She didn't ask when. The next meal was at my house. Eric called first. Would next Sunday work? 4:30. Should we bring anything? Salad. Whitney arrived carrying one bowl. No bakery bag, no garment bag, no folder. She stood on the porch until I opened the door. "May we come in?" she asked. Yes. That meal lasted longer. Not because everything was repaired, because no one pushed. Eric washed the dishes. Whitney dried them. I put away the leftovers. When she opened the wrong cabinet, she closed it and asked where the containers belonged. It was a small question. I answered it. Over the next month, we ate together twice more. I didn't give Eric a new house key. He didn't request one. I didn't show him the trust records. He didn't ask. Financial access stayed where it belonged. Family access remained conditional on how we treated one another. Whitney never returned to the library as a representative. When she attended a public repair event with Eric, she signed in as a visitor. Amy told me she worked at a table for 2 hours, then left without approaching sponsors. I didn't count that as repayment. There was no repayment for Stanley's original letter. It was gone. The duplicate couldn't change that. One Sunday after dinner, Eric stood beside Stanley's desk. "Can I ask about the letter?" "You can ask. Will you let me read the private part?" "Not tonight." He nodded. "I understand. Do you?" "I think so." He touched the back of Stanley's chair but didn't sit. "I gave away something Dad trusted me to keep." "Yes, I kept thinking I could fix it later. That was your habit." He looked at me. "I'm trying to change it. I can see that." Those 4 words were all I gave him. They were also true. 2 weeks later, I brought the duplicate to the kitchen table. Eric arrived alone because I had invited him alone. I handed him the pages. He read the family portion silently. When he reached Stanley's sentence about making the uncomfortable choice, he covered his mouth. I stayed across from him. He finished the letter and returned it with both hands. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know. Do you forgive me?" "Some days more than others." He nodded. That was the most honest answer I had. Forgiveness wasn't a door I could unlock once. It was closer to trust. It responded to use. Eric continued at the college every Thursday. After 3 months, the coordinator gave him responsibility for checking returned tools and preparing the lab for evening classes. It was still unpaid. Eric didn't ask the trust to fund him. Whitney continued to ask before visiting. Once, when I said no, she answered, "Another time." No tears, no pressure. Another time came 2 weeks later. Near the end of December, the college invited me to see what the grant had supported. I walked through the repaired welding area. Both booths were operating. The cracked helmets had been replaced. The electrical lab stayed open 2 additional evenings. On the wall outside the tool room, the program had installed a small archive case for grant records and letters. The coordinator showed me the label they had prepared. Stanley Hamilton. Nothing more. No title. No claim that the program belonged to him. They had made a protective sleeve for the signed duplicate. I kept a certified copy with the trust records at home. Eric stood several feet away. He had asked whether I wanted him there. I had said yes. I read Stanley's final paragraph once more. Then I placed the pages inside the sleeve. The coordinator handed me the case key. I locked Stanley's duplicate letter into the college tool program's archive case beneath his name.